on dreaming the world.
After long consideration, the conclusion for as long as we know anything about intellectual history. The second is, are we going to make it? Yeah. Not a precept. It's system. Is the demand the movement? Acceptable. Says to the other, darling, we really love. So what do I need to? So one of them makes yes. And we're always being tied up in this thing. And the first rule is now the Indian Hindu theory of the cosmos is precisely this. Same with It's The suspense of that is a great dramatic moment. But the Hindu has that funny look, which says, ah. Well, now, we've got to get to the bottom of this. And I want to, really, I'm a little diffident about this because I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence. But I do want to give you what should be called the first lesson. What your mother should have told you before you learned about 1, 2, 3 and ABC. There is something underneath all that. There's something much deeper. And it's, of course, about black and white. But now let me introduce it by asking you to consider all your senses as forms of one sense. Basically a sort of sense of touch. Because seeing is touching at a distance. Our eyes are so sensitive that they can touch light. Our ears are so sensitive that they can touch vibrations of air. Our fingertips are less sensitive. In Western civilization, our noses are almost insensitive. But these are all forms of response to touch, whether they be rather solid things like tables and rocks, or whether they be very subtle things like tiny particles in the air or light waves. So when your senses are touched, they go off and on. Either there's something there or there isn't. Now, when you consider, for example, the phenomenon of sound, there isn't actually such a thing as pure sound. When you hear a sound, a note being sung, you are actually hearing a vibration. You are hearing sound silence, oscillating. Because it is the alternation of sound and silence that impresses us. This is so with almost all contacts. If you have a delightful girl sitting next to you, and you want to make your presence known to her, and you put your hand on her knee, and you leave it there, she will cease to notice it. But if you gently pat her on the knee, she'll know you're still there. Because you come and you go. Now you see it, now you don't. So all physical manifestations are in this sense vibratory. They are pulses. Light is a pulse. And the most solid rock is also a pulse. And you can't put your finger through it for the same reason that you can't put your finger through an electric fan when it's revolving. It's going too fast. So this table is going so fast that I can't. Darn it, philosophers are always using tables to illustrate something because they speak in classrooms. It gets a little boring. But still, it resists because it's going so fast. On, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. So you see, this is the process, the nature of a wave. You can't have, there is not such a thing in nature as half a wave. A wave, that is to say, which has only a crest and no trough. To get a wave, you have to have a crest and a trough at the very least. So the up and the down go together. Likewise, therefore, the black and the white. So what we call existence is being, non-being. So therefore, to be or not to be is not the question. To be and not to be are inseparable companions. Just like Tweedledum and Tweedledee, who incidentally agreed to have a battle. So between all these explicit differences, like the top and the bottom, the up and the down, the front and the back, the light and the dark, explicit differences have behind them an implicit unity. That is to say, they are always found together. There is, as it were, a conspiracy under the surface to look as different as possible and yet to be one. It takes one to produce difference. Because you see, you don't know what you mean by difference unless you know what you mean by unity. You don't know what you mean by is unless you know what you mean by isn't. You know, there is a match booklet in this hand, and there isn't one in this hand. Abstract from that, and you get the idea of being and non-being. But they go together. Now, the whole joke that's been played on you, by you, of course, is that they don't go together. That, in other words, black might win. That seems very persuasive. After all, when one looks at existence, you realize it's quite an effort. A lot of energy going on. Wouldn't it have been so much easier for there not to have been anything at all? Once you get that idea, existence becomes odd. And so also when you think about death, what would it be like to go to sleep and never wake up? That thought always makes us intellectually dizzy. And it makes you think about birth, the funny event of waking up after never having gone to sleep. And there's something distinctly spooky about that. But, you see, this is all part of it. That the black side has to be real, genuine black, so that the white side can be real, genuine white. And it must always seem as if whenever black turns up, that's going to be the end. And this is the conspiracy. So when you've got the game, uh-oh, black might win, you have to play the next game, which is, uh-oh, white must win. And so we start it all out, the battle between the sides. And from this battle come all the complexities of human culture, just out of black and white. Look how complicated we can make them. The game of heads and tails is one of the very simplest forms. Will it be heads? Will it be tails? That gets boring. We make it more complicated. We make them into dice. We make them into checkers. More complicated still, chess. That's all based on black and white. But how elegant. Even color emerges finally from black and white. Analyze our composite structure down to its final terms, and we seem to turn up to be something like a newspaper photograph. You know, black and white dots that stand away from them, and they seem to be light and shadow. The pointillist painters saw this. That we are all this buzzing little on-off, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Every neuron is either firing or not firing, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And out of this multiplicity of yes and no comes, look at this thing. But it all depends on this little joke, see? That we forget, somehow, that yes and no go together. A person who understands that, you see, is a sort of initiate. He's been let in behind the scenes. He's what you would call a person who's very far in. There are a lot of most of us are very far out. Actually, like the person you might call a square is the most far out person there is, because he really believes that black might win, that white must win. He's completely bamboozled. He's altogether forgotten the secret. So he's way, way out, lost as lost can get. But how brave, how magnificent. But so that he doesn't go off his head altogether, there are always in society some far-in people. And they're what are called the esoteric people, as compared with the exoteric people. And the far-in people are rather cagey. They don't give the show away too easily. Now you might say, you're not being very far in. You're explaining to us what the joke is. And you really shouldn't do that, because if we knew that it was all right, and that the whole thing was a joke, what would happen to our incentives? Now, I feel I can say all this quite safely, because very few people will believe it. Because it's very difficult to believe. The other position, that black might win, is marvelously persuasive. So maybe in this audience there might be a few people who would understand, and then our anxiety is, will such people stop the show? Will they suddenly become inert, be enemies of progress, or become frankly immoral because, you want to obliterate someone, and after all they're not serious, they're just a mask of God, which is the same as you are. You can just push them out of the way, it doesn't matter. Will they get like that? Well, there's always a gamble, you see. The whole thing is a gamble. And there's always danger. Every good thing in this world is dangerous. The moment you teach a child how to walk, you give it the capacity to kick its mother. The moment you have fire to warm yourself and to cook with, you have the possibility of destruction. There is no way around danger. So, of course, a person who was, in the highest sense of the word, disenchanted, you see, that it's a marvelous word, because it has a positive meaning as well as the usual negative one. To be enchanted is to be spellbound, to be fascinated, like a chicken with its nose on a chalk line. So the actor who is really involved in playing the world is fascinated. He is enchanted by his own spell. Spell, in the beginning was the word. Do you see? The chant. So to be disenchanted is to suddenly recover from a state of auto-hypnosis, to wake up. That's why a Buddha means, from the Sanskrit word bud, to waken, to be awakened. A Buddha is one who has woken up and who knows, my goodness, it's all a dream. But what a magnificent dream. Beautiful, see? A great work of art. Art in the highest sense. Maya, as the Hindus call the world, as well as Leela. Maya means, very roughly, illusion, but it means a lot more besides. It means magic. It means art. It means creative power. It means construction. From a root word, mater, to lay down the foundations of a building. Hence our word, meter. Measure. Metric. And also matter. Does it matter? Means, does it put on a good show? Does it amount to something? Is it a convincing illusion? Illusion, likewise, connected with the Latin ludere, to play. But you see, we have a culture in which words like play, illusion, and so on have a bad connotation. We don't want to get with an illusion. And we want in the end to know, I wonder if we really do want this, that at least God is serious. Now look, if I say to you, I love you, and supposing I say this in a very personal way to a particular individual, the person I say that to turns round to me and says, are you serious? I say no. No, indeed. But I am sincere. This is a commitment. It's a rash commitment. It's the height of rashness. But it's therefore not serious. Kaiserling, in his South American Meditations, makes the point that a man of spirit is above all a man lacking in seriousness. He, as a man of courage, plays with his life. And to quote G.K. Chesterton again, he said, "The angels fly because they take themselves lightly." How much more so, then, the Lord of the angels? I mean, just let me put this in anthropomorphic terms, because there's an important thing about talking about God in anthropomorphic terms. A, nobody takes it too seriously. B, it puts things vividly in ways that escape more abstract intellectual language. I mean, when all those angels and saints are around the throne of God in heaven forever and ever, what sort of a show do you want to be going on? Is everybody going to look at each other and weep? Are they going to stare into the eye of the Lord and say, Dante, in the Paradiso, describes the hymn of the angels, and he says it is like the laughter of the universe. In other words, they sing Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. And what the devil does that mean? It doesn't mean anything, except it's a kind of celestial whoopee. So you see, what I'm pointing out is this, that even in the tradition of the most serious religion that there is, the one that really takes life seriously, because there's the possibility of ultimate tragedy, even in this most serious religion, its mythological forms, its symbology, gives a little tweak to give away the show. Just as in those Hindu images of Shiva, the destroyer aspect of the divinity, when he is dancing the Tandava, the dance that he dances at the end of the cycle, when the whole universe is destroyed. He's shown with 10 arms and fierce aspect. And in 9 of his arms, he has bells and thunderbolts and clubs and knives. But one arm is in this gesture. The hand, palm outwards, fingers up. It means, don't be afraid. This is a big act. So you see, the notion of the world as playful is, I think you may agree, the only finally workable and rational solution to our predicament. There is always, of course, the chance that it might not be. There is indeed the chance that you may wake up to find yourself everlastingly damned, or that you may never wake up at all. I don't know what that would mean, except nobody would ever know whether it was serious or wasn't. But it seems to me that there are certain metaphysical systems, some of which are good gambles, and some of which are not. Because a great deal of the problems of life resolve themselves to the question, what are good game rules? Ethical questions have to be decided this way, aesthetic questions, and questions of simple political organization. Now, you can obviously see, can't you, that a social order in which nobody trusts anybody else is not set up as a going game. If everybody is spying on his next door neighbor, and if we have a big brother who's got a kind of television outlet and a mic in every room, everybody's bugged. And that's no game, because the poor old big brother can't even take a walk in the park. But he's got to sit there watching everybody. The Hindus worked this out in a book called the Artha Shastra, where it is a manual of operations for the perfect tyrant. And it gives minute instructions how to hedge himself in with rings like the rings of a spider's web. How he gets the different ranks of his courtiers and advisors, he puts them all at enmity with each other, so that they will all spy on each other and all report on each other. And then right in the center, he lives in the super protected room, where he has guards, but other guards watching those guards. And he has a secret exit out from the middle that goes somewhere down to the river where he's got a fast speedboat waiting. And on the way out, there's a keystone he can pull and make the whole palace collapse. Now here is a man living in perpetual paranoia. He can't even sleep. He has to have some varlet taste his food for him to be sure it isn't poisoned. He's the maximum non-trust. And this is a non-workable system. You cannot throw a ball unless you're willing to let go of it. So in exactly this way, game rules have to have play in them. That is to say, they have to be a good game, has to involve a wonderful balance of chance and skill, randomness and order. Then it has a chance of going on. I was discussing tossing a coin. That's a very boring game. Tic-tac-toe is a pretty boring game, because if you know how to play it, anyone who starts wins. So it reduces itself to tossing coins. On the other extreme, three-dimensional chess is much too complicated for most people to keep track of. And they lose themselves in the tangles of it. But somehow in the middle, games like poker, bridge, chess, even Go, marvelously intriguing. People can get fascinated with them. You know how it is. Once you become a chess buff, you can't let go. You go on and on and on and on. Well, that's what we call the instinct for survival. You know, the moth game, the bee game, the bird game, the man game. You can't let go. It's fascinating. So we're all human buffs. A universe that mans or that peoples, just as an apple tree apples. And the apple tree apple serves to go on appling, because appling is great. So is treeing. But you can see different forms of trees and different forms of animals in the same way as you get the difference between mazurka, waltz, charleston, twist, rumba, or sonata, fugue, partita, or mahjong, chess, dominoes. It's all like that. The question is to find out the most fascinating thing. See, if you play chess, which can become a game of pure skill, with the element of chance almost eliminated when a real champion is concerned, it ceases to be fun after a while, unless you have an opponent who is a little bit unpredictable. The whole point of it is that you cannot quite figure out the other person's skill, and that introduces an element of chance. But if a game is pure chance, the fun goes out of it, unless you're out of your mind and think that there is a serious chance you might win. So it's in looking for that strange balance that we find a clue to what it's all about. The question is simply, fundamentally, do you have the nerve to follow that through? Can you look black, night, death in the face and say, well, I really do know you're the other side of white. You come on pretty fierce. Well, that's your nature. And that anxiety, which constantly asks the question, to be or not to be. And there comes a moment, often quietly, when you realize
you no longer know what you're doing. Not in the sense that you've forgotten your plans, but in the deeper sense when all the plans you've made stop making sense. You wake up one morning, and though nothing looks different, everything feels different. The job, the relationships, the daily routines, all the things that once gave you a sense of direction suddenly feel hollow, like a script you've memorized but no longer believe in. And the strangest thing about it is that it doesn't always come with sadness. Sometimes it's just a blankness, a strange, gentle emptiness where the meaning used to be. You move through your day as though underwater, hearing people speak, watching yourself respond, but somewhere inside knowing that none of it feels alive anymore. This is the moment when most people panic, because for so long we've been taught that purpose is everything, that life must always be aimed towards something, a goal, a mission, a destination. We spend years building an identity around what we do, what we achieve, what we produce. So when the compass stops pointing anywhere, it feels like the end of something essential. But it isn't the end. It's the beginning. You see, this confusion, this uncertainty, is not a mistake in the system. It is the system. Life has a way of dissolving the structures we outgrow. It takes away the illusions we cling to until we finally notice that they were illusions. It removes the things we think we can't live without, and in doing so, reveals that we were never living through them to begin with. To not know what you're doing anymore is to stand at the threshold of a deeper truth, because only when the outer purpose collapses can the inner purpose emerge. Only when you stop knowing with your mind can you start listening with your being. Most people try to escape this stage. They distract themselves, fill the silence with noise, or rush to find a new project, a new meaning, a new dream to chase. But the more you run, the more lost you become. The feeling doesn't leave because it isn't meant to. It's not a symptom of something wrong. It's an invitation, a call from life itself to stop pretending you're in control. Think of the ocean. When the waves crash, the surface looks chaotic, unpredictable. But deep down, the water is still. When you lose your sense of direction, you are being pulled downward into that stillness. The storm of the mind begins to lose its power, and something quieter begins to appear beneath it. But because we've spent our lives identifying with the storm, we fear the calm. The mind says, if I stop chasing, I'll fall behind. If I stop knowing, I'll disappear. Yet the truth is that the one who feels lost was never the real you. The self that needs direction is only the surface self, the mask that performs for the world. The one beneath it doesn't need direction at all, because it never left home. This is why the ancient teachers spoke of the power of not knowing. Because to not know is to become teachable again. It is to return to innocence, not ignorance, but openness. The kind of awareness a child has when they look at the world without trying to control it. When you are no longer certain of what you're doing, life begins to show you what it's been doing all along. You begin to see that things move by themselves, that the heart beats, the lungs breathe, the planets spin, the seasons change, all without your interference. You begin to realize that the world is not asking you to manage it, it's asking you to participate in it, and there's a vast difference between the two. Participation means allowing yourself to be moved by life, not pushing it forward with effort and will. It's dancing with the rhythm rather than dictating the steps. And that's why losing your sense of direction can feel so disorienting, because you're shifting from being the choreographer to being the dancer. When you reach this stage, the mind tries to bargain. It says, if I can just understand what's happening, I'll feel safe again. But life doesn't owe you understanding. It offers you something far more profound experience. And understanding comes later, in the quiet moments when you realize that what felt like loss was actually transformation in disguise. Every meaningful change begins in confusion. Caterpillars do not know they are becoming butterflies. They simply dissolve. The same is true for you. The life you thought you were building is dissolving so that a more truthful one can emerge, not designed by your mind, but discovered by your being. So, When you find yourself in that fog, don't rush to clear it. Sit with it. Let it unfold at its own pace, because that fog is not a failure of clarity. It's the very process by which clarity arrives. You might look around and think everyone else knows what they're doing, but they don't. They're just better at pretending. Most people are following scripts written by fear, fear of being left behind, fear of insignificance, fear of stillness. You, however, have stepped off the stage. You've stopped acting long enough to hear the silence beneath the performance. And though it feels uncertain now, that silence is where the real music begins. Because the truth is, you don't need to know what you're doing to live a meaningful life. You only need to be here, aware, receptive, willing. The rest unfolds naturally. Think of how flowers bloom. They don't calculate the right moment. They open when the sun touches them. The same intelligence that moves the tides and births the stars is guiding your unfolding too. It doesn't need your constant interference. It needs your trust. This is the paradox of awakening, that we try so hard to find meaning, not realizing that meaning is what's trying to find us. It's been knocking on your door, waiting for you to stop rearranging the furniture long enough to hear it. You are not lost. You are simply being stripped of what can no longer come with you. And if you can stay open even when it hurts, even when it's unclear, you'll notice something miraculous happening. You'll stop trying to force the river and begin to flow with it. You'll realize that life was never something to solve, but something to experience. And then, without warning, you'll find yourself smiling again, not because you figured it out, but because you finally stopped trying to. You'll see that you were never meant to know every step of the path. You were only meant to walk it, one moment at a time, with wonder instead of control, with openness instead of certainty. And in that simple surrender, you'll rediscover something you forgot long ago, that not knowing is the most alive state there is. Because when you don't know what you're doing anymore, you are closer than ever to remembering who you really are. There comes a quiet moment after the confusion, when something in you stops struggling to make sense of it all. The mind, exhausted from trying to understand, begins to soften. And in that softening, you start to notice that life is still happening beautifully, rhythmically, indifferently. The trees still sway, the clouds still move, the wind still carries the scent of the earth. The same world that felt meaningless yesterday now begins to breathe with a strange kind of peace. Because the truth is, meaning never left you. You just buried it under the noise of needing to be someone. You thought purpose was something you could think your way into, when in fact it was something you could only return to. It was always there, beneath the tension, beneath the pretending, waiting for you to stop trying so hard to deserve it. There is an intelligence far older than your mind that has been guiding you since before you were born. It beats your heart, it grows your bones, it keeps you alive even when you forget to live. It doesn't need your permission or your plan. It only asks for your attention, not the kind that analyzes, but the kind that sees. You begin to realize that you were never supposed to figure life out, only to experience it fully. You were never supposed to have it all together. You were supposed to fall apart again and again until you saw that there was never anything to hold together in the first place. The falling was always part of the dance. When you stop trying to control the dance, life starts moving through you like music. You stop counting the steps. You start to feel the rhythm. And somewhere between the notes, between the breaths, you remember what you are. You are not the dancer. You are the dance itself. But this realization doesn't arrive with fireworks or revelation. It comes quietly, like the first light before dawn. You notice you're no longer rushing to escape yourself. You're no longer trying to trade this moment for another. You're simply here breathing, watching, existing. And that, you realize, has always been enough. You start to see that the moments you once called meaningless were never empty. They were simply unobserved. Life wasn't waiting to become significant. You were waiting to become present. And in that presence, even the smallest things begin to glow, the way sunlight dances on water, the way laughter spills out of nowhere, the way time slows down when you stop wishing it would move faster. These are not ordinary moments. They are the fabric of life itself, woven together by a quiet intelligence that asks for nothing in return. You once thought you needed a map to live. Now you realize you only needed to look around. You once believed you needed to understand your path. Now you see that the path itself was understanding you. Every detour, every delay, every collapse, it was all part of life's mysterious way of leading you home. You see, when you no longer know what you're doing, you finally allow life to do what it's been doing all along. You begin to trust the current instead of fighting it. You begin to rest, not in certainty, but in faith, not the kind of faith that believes in something, but the kind that simply allows everything. And it's here, in this quiet permission, that your life begins to breathe again. Because the truth is, clarity doesn't come from understanding everything. It comes from accepting that you never will. Peace doesn't come from solving your problems. It comes from seeing that you are not a problem to solve. When you stop forcing yourself into shapes that please the world, you realize the world was never asking you to change. It was only reflecting back your own misunderstanding of who you are. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are not late to anything. You are exactly where you were always meant to be in this moment. Aware, alive, unfolding. And perhaps that's what you were meant to learn all along. That life was never about becoming something, but about remembering that you already are everything you've been searching for. When this realization begins to settle in, you notice something beautiful. You no longer crave answers the way you used to. The questions remain, but they no longer torment you. They simply exist, like stars scattered across the night, silent, mysterious, and somehow perfect in their distance. You no longer need to define yourself because you understand that whatever can be defined is not truly you. You no longer cling to roles or labels because you sense how fluid you've always been. You no longer try to fix the uncertainty because you see now that uncertainty is the space where life breathes. You stop needing to be certain to be free. You stop needing to be someone to be whole. And when this happens, a quiet joy begins to bloom, not the loud joy of achievement, but the soft joy of belonging. Belonging to nothing in particular, yet everything at once. You realize you were never separate from the flow you were trying to control. You were the flow itself, dreaming it was lost. And so you sit there, not knowing what's next, and for the first time, that's perfectly fine, because you sense that whatever comes will come through you, not against you. You don't need to chase your next chapter. It's already writing itself in the silence, in the waiting, in the very act of being alive. This is the grace of not knowing, that it leaves you open enough to finally see. You no longer have to pretend to be the one holding everything together. You can let go and trust that the hands of existence are far steadier than your own. And then, when you least expect it, life begins to move again, gently, effortlessly. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped blocking it. Not because you knew what to do, but because you allowed yourself to not know. You smile at the mystery of it all, the divine comedy of trying to plan infinity, and you understand that you were never lost. You were simply learning how to see again. So when you don't know what you're doing anymore, remember this: you don't need to. Life knows. It always has. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it whisper not in words, but in the rhythm of your own heart, that you are already home. After a while, you begin to notice that not knowing has its own kind of intelligence. It isn't confusion anymore. It's space, a vast, quiet openness that allows everything to be what it is. The mind, once frantic to decide and define, now learns to bow before something it cannot measure. At first, this feels disorienting. almost like losing the ground beneath your feet. You search for the next goal, the next explanation, the next identity that will anchor you again. But none of them fit. They feel too small, too artificial, too loud for the silence that's begun to bloom within you. So you stop chasing certainty, not out of defeat, but out of recognition. You realize that every certainty you've ever clung to has eventually dissolved, and yet something in you has remained untouched, unmoved, quietly aware. That awareness becomes your true home, your quiet refuge in the middle of life's noise. From that stillness, you begin to see the play more clearly. The constant striving, the endless self-improvement, the desperate need to prove your worth, all of it starts to look like a dream you finally awakened from. You smile, perhaps even laugh, at the absurdity of it. Because how could you ever improve upon something that was never broken? This realization does not make life dull. On the contrary, it makes everything radiant. When you stop trying to control the script, you begin to see the beauty of improvisation. You start to notice how every event, even the painful ones, carry a hidden rhythm, how each moment leads to the next, not through force, but through flow. You no longer see life as a staircase to climb, but as a river to enter. The river knows where it's going. You don't have to steer it. All you need to do is trust its current, and it will carry you exactly where you're meant to be. But trust is not passive. It is a living act. It means showing up without guarantees. It means stepping forward without knowing if the ground will appear beneath your feet. It means opening your heart, even when it has been broken before. It means daring to live without the armor of control, to love without the safety of certainty, to walk through the unknown as though it were your own home. In that trust, life begins to meet you halfway. Synchronicities appear not as miracles, but as natural expressions of harmony. You meet the right people at the right time. The opportunities you once chased begin to unfold on their own. You realize that the world was never withholding from you. It was waiting for you to stop resisting it. Something ancient in you awakens, a memory beyond words that existence has always been whole. You begin to see that the purpose of your confusion was never to be solved, but to humble you, to soften you, to open you wide enough to receive what intellect could never grasp. You start to live more gently. You listen more deeply. You speak less often, but with more truth. You become less interested in convincing and more interested in understanding. You see that every person you meet is also walking their own uncertain path, trying to find peace in the mystery. And that understanding breeds compassion. You stop demanding that people be perfect because you've stopped demanding that of yourself. You stop measuring worth by success because you've seen how empty success feels when it isn't aligned with being. You stop running from silence because you've discovered that silence isn't empty, it's alive, like the pause between waves. From here, a new kind of freedom begins to take shape, not the loud freedom of rebellion, but the quiet freedom of alignment. You no longer need to resist life because you finally realize that you are not separate from it. You no longer need to search for meaning because you've become meaning itself, unfolding, breathing, existing without needing a reason. You start to see that what you once called confusion was actually grace in disguise. It stripped away what was false so that the truth could be felt, not understood. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity taking a slower, more honest form. Now, every ordinary act becomes sacred. Washing a dish, watching the rain, sitting with someone in silence. You feel the same intelligence moving through all of it, not above or beyond life, but within it. You realize that enlightenment was never about escaping the world. It was about coming home to it as it is. You may still wake up some mornings feeling uncertain, but that no longer frightens you. You've learned to recognize it as a sign that you're alive, because certainty is the end of curiosity, and curiosity is the pulse of existence itself. You begin to thank the very uncertainty you once cursed. because you see how it's guided every step of your journey, not through control, but through connection. It kept you awake, it kept you humble, it kept you human. And perhaps that's the most profound discovery of all, that being human was never a mistake to overcome, but the miracle you were meant to embody. When you stop knowing, you start living. When you stop trying to arrive, you begin to arrive everywhere. When you stop seeking the divine outside of life, you realize it's been hiding inside every moment you ignored. The truth you've been searching for isn't hidden in books or philosophies. It's in the way your breath moves when you finally stop rushing. It's in the warmth of a sunrise you almost missed. It's in the quiet ache that reminds you how deeply you can still feel. Not knowing what you're doing anymore was never the end. It was the invitation, the doorway, the call back to what's real. And maybe that's all awakening truly is, remembering what you already knew before the world taught you to forget. Because the moment you stop demanding that life makes sense, it suddenly does, not in logic, but in wonder. Not in certainty, but in peace. You smile, not because everything is perfect, but because it doesn't need to be. You're no longer waiting to begin. You already have. If you're hearing these words, it isn't by mistake. This moment found you exactly when it needed to, not a second too soon, not a moment too late. Life has a way of arranging such meetings when the noise begins to settle just enough for you to notice its whisper. Perhaps you were looking for something tonight, or perhaps you stumbled here without knowing why. But nothing truly stumbles. Everything arrives with a certain rhythm, like the wave that reaches the shore precisely when the tide decides it's time. We like to believe we choose what we see, what we listen to, what we pay attention to. Yet, sometimes it feels more truthful to say that life chooses for us that certain ideas, certain voices, certain moments seek us out when we're ready to hear them. So maybe you didn't find this. Maybe it found you. And if it did, it's because something inside you is ready to remember. Ready to remember that change is not the enemy, that growth does not have to come with struggle, and that even the smallest shifts can carry you toward a life you can finally breathe in. A lot can change for the good in 6 months, not through obsession or pressure, but through awareness, gentleness, and a willingness to cooperate with what already wants to unfold. 6 months, that's all it takes for the seasons to turn, for a tree to shed and grow anew, for the moon to circle the earth half a dozen times. 6 months is long enough for an old pattern to dissolve and a new rhythm to take root. Yet to the hurried mind, it sounds like an eternity. To the wise heart, it's only a breath. So let us begin not with a plan, but with a pause. Take one slow breath and feel how even this simple act carries you from the person you were a moment ago into someone slightly changed. Every inhale is arrival, every exhale, release. This is the entire secret of transformation written in the language of the body. Take in what nourishes, let go of what no longer serves, and trust the rhythm in between. The first teaching, then, is simple. Do not rush your becoming. You cannot bully the flower into blooming, nor scold the sun into rising faster. Life ripens at its own pace. What matters is not speed, but sincerity. When you give yourself completely to the moment you're in, time becomes an ally rather than a threat. The minutes are no longer something to beat, they are something to inhabit. You see, most people try to change their lives as though they were rearranging furniture, push this here, drag that there, throw out what you don't like. But the deeper kind of change begins in stillness. It starts when you stop treating yourself as a project to be fixed and start seeing yourself as a process to be understood. 6 months of honest observation, noticing your reactions, your habits, your hidden fears, will do more than 6 years of self-improvement performed out of guilt. The second teaching is awareness. Not the strained awareness of someone trying to meditate perfectly, but the soft kind, the awareness that simply notices. Notice when you tighten, notice when you breathe freely, notice what brings lightness to your chest and what contracts it. Awareness doesn't demand that you act immediately. It only asks that you see clearly. And clarity, all by itself, begins to move mountains. You might say, but noticing isn't enough. I need to do something. Yet the truth is, most of our doing springs from confusion. We act before we understand, and then we wonder why the results look the same. The power of awareness is that it lets right action emerge naturally, the way a path appears once the fog lifts. 6 months of honest noticing will reveal more direction than a lifetime of anxious decision-making. The third teaching is gentleness. Real growth is tender, not violent. The seed breaks open not because it is forced, but because the conditions invite it. So be gentle with your timing. You are unfolding exactly as you must. Gentleness is not laziness. It is intelligence, the intelligence of the universe that knows how to turn an acorn into an oak without rushing. When you replace self-criticism with curiosity, life begins to cooperate with you instead of resisting you. The next teaching is presence in the ordinary. Many people chase enlightenment as if it were hidden in some distant temple, when in truth it hides in the small things you overlook. The way sunlight falls on your hands, the sound of water running from the tap, the silence between two breaths. If you give yourself to these, even for a moment, you are already practicing awakening. 6 months of giving your full attention to the simple will make the complex take care of itself. Now, the mind will argue that such small things can't possibly change a life. It wants grand gestures, dramatic transformations, fireworks of self-reinvention. But think of the ocean. It shapes continents grain by grain. Think of music. It's nothing but waves of air, yet it can make you weep. The subtle is not weak, it is foundational. If you honor the subtle each day, you begin to live from the source instead of the surface. The fifth teaching is trust. Trust is the quiet confidence that the universe knows what it's doing, even when you do not. It is understanding that you are being shaped by forces wiser than your plans. Trust is not blind faith, it's intimate cooperation with reality. It's what happens when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this showing me? In 6 months of living with that single shift in question, you would become unrecognizable not because life got easier, but because you stopped fighting what was already trying to help you grow. And of course, gratitude, the awareness of enough. Gratitude doesn't mean pretending that everything is perfect. It means noticing that perfection isn't required for beauty. The moment you begin to thank the small things, a clear sky, a kind word, the warmth of your own body, you step into abundance. For 6 months, practice this. Whenever you catch yourself complaining, pause, breathe, and name one thing that still supports you. You will find the complaint fades, and in its place, something steady arises, a kind of quiet contentment that doesn't depend on circumstance. Now, someone might say, but I've tried all this before. I know these ideas. To which I would ask, do you know them, or have you simply heard them? To know a truth is to live it until it becomes the way you breathe. 6 months of living, even one of these truths, sincerely will teach you more than 100 inspirational quotes ever could. And so the invitation is simple. Do less, notice more. Stop demanding that life give you instant proof of progress. The proof is already there, in every breath, every sunrise, every gentle reminder that you are still here, still capable of renewal. You are not late, you are not behind. You are right on time, because time itself is your teacher, not your jailer. Let this next half year be your experiment in trust. Let it be the season in which you stop forcing and start listening. Watch what happens when you replace control with curiosity, tension with patience, judgment with awareness. The change will not announce itself with fanfare. One morning, you'll simply wake up and realize the heaviness you used to carry is gone. You didn't fix it. It simply melted when you stopped feeding it. And when that happens, You will smile not because everything is perfect, but because you finally understand it never needed to be. You will see that the universe was never testing you, only teaching you to listen. And in that listening, the next 6 months and the rest of your life will take care of themselves. There comes a moment when awareness no longer feels like practice, but presence, when you stop trying to be mindful and simply are. It happens quietly, often without you noticing. You realize one day that the thoughts which once ruled you have softened, that the noise has lost its authority. You still think, you still plan, you still worry from time to time, but the thoughts no longer pull you by the collar. They pass through like weather over a mountain. The mountain does not resist the clouds. It allows them to drift by, knowing they cannot stay. This is what maturity of spirit feels like, not perfection, not constant peace, but a deep familiarity with change. You no longer fear every shift in mood, every season of uncertainty. You begin to see that everything, even confusion, has its place in the dance. 6 months of living this way, of greeting each day as a visitor rather than an obstacle, and you will notice the difference not in what happens to you, but in how you meet it. The great paradox of awakening is that it doesn't make you immune to life. It makes you more intimate with it. The rain still falls, the heart still aches, the losses still come, but suffering changes its texture. Pain is no longer an enemy to flee. It becomes a teacher to listen to. And the listening itself is the release. When you stop running from what hurts, you find that what hurts had something sacred to tell you all along. You begin to see that control was never the source of safety. Control is the mind's imitation of trust, an anxious attempt to replace faith with structure. But life cannot be caged. The more tightly you grip, the more it slips. Yet when you open your hands, everything falls gently into place. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stop disturbing the natural flow. You see, there is a wisdom at work beneath your plans, the same wisdom that turns caterpillars into butterflies, tides into moons, seeds into forests. That wisdom does not need your constant supervision. It only asks that you cooperate by not standing in the way. When you align with that intelligence through stillness, through honesty, through awareness, life begins to move through you effortlessly. You become the dancer who no longer counts the steps, but simply moves with the rhythm. This is what the ancient Taoists called Wu Wei, effortless action, doing without forcing. It does not mean passivity. It means the harmony between what you want and what the moment allows. To act in this way is to feel that life is not something happening to you, but something happening as you. The boundary between the doer and the deed dissolves. You are painting, but also being painted. You are breathing, but also being breathed. If, for 6 months, you practiced only this, the art of letting life breathe through you, you would begin to taste freedom, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. You would wake in the morning not with the weight of things to control, but with curiosity for how the day might unfold. The mind would still whisper its worries, but you would smile at them like an old friend who no longer needs to be believed. And in this space, something miraculous happens. Joy returns. Not the fleeting pleasure that depends on outcomes, but the quiet joy of existing. The kind of joy a child feels watching raindrops race down a window, or the kind that rises for no reason at all while walking alone. This joy is the natural fragrance of presence. It doesn't need an explanation. It is what remains when the noise of striving fades. You may ask, but what about ambition? What about goals? The awakened person doesn't lose direction. They simply stop mistaking the destination for the journey. There's nothing wrong with wanting success, or love, or peace, but you will suffer if you think they live somewhere in the future. All the joy you seek is hidden in how you walk toward them, not in their arrival. 6 months of walking mindfully toward what you love will change your relationship with desire itself. You will no longer chase, you will invite. This is the art of surrender, not giving up, but giving in. To surrender is to recognize that life knows more about life than you do. It is the humility to admit that the same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies might be trusted to handle your next chapter. When you surrender to that intelligence, you stop praying for things to go your way and start asking to see the way things are. That shift alone can dissolve a lifetime of tension, and so you begin to act from stillness instead of panic. You begin to speak from clarity instead of defense. You begin to love without needing to possess. What once felt like effort becomes grace. What once felt like a burden becomes a blessing in disguise. In that simplicity, 6 months can become a lifetime's worth of evolution. Now, there's another illusion worth letting go of, the illusion of progress as linear. You will not rise every day. Some days you'll fall. Some weeks you'll feel lost. But understand, a spiral moves both upward and inward. Growth revisits its lessons, but each time with more awareness. When you see old patterns return, don't call it failure, call it review. The universe is showing you what's left to integrate. 6 months of honoring even your setbacks as sacred will reshape how you see yourself. Instead of punishing your mistakes, you will learn from them like a patient gardener who studies why a flower didn't bloom, not with anger, but with curiosity. You will begin to see that every event, pleasant or painful, was another doorway to understanding. And that understanding, not achievement, is what makes a life fulfilled. Eventually, you will look back on these months and realize that what changed most was not your circumstances, but your relationship with them. The storm didn't stop. You learned how to dance in the rain. The noise of the world didn't quiet. You discovered the silence beneath it. The future didn't become certain. You made peace with uncertainty itself. That peace is freedom, not escape from life, but intimacy with it. And then, at last, the mind relaxes. It no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. You see that life was never asking you to win, but to awaken, to participate, to witness the miracle of being conscious, even for a brief moment, in this endless unfolding of the cosmos. What could possibly be missing from that? So, if these words have found you, let them remind you of something you already know deep down. You are not late, you are not broken, you are not behind. You are precisely where the river needs you to be. The current has carried you here, not to test you, but to teach you how to flow. The coming 6 months will pass, whether you worry or not, whether you struggle or trust. But if you choose trust, if you choose awareness, gentleness, gratitude, then those same 6 months can become the softest revolution of your life. And when the time comes to look back, you will smile, not because everything went according to plan, but because you finally learned to dance with the plan of everything. And in that smile, life will smile back.
Have you ever had one of those moments where everything seemed to go wrong at once? Your morning coffee spills, you miss the bus, someone says something that cuts just a little too deep, and by the end of the day you're left wondering, what is going on? We tend to brush these things off as bad luck, as random chaos in an indifferent universe. But what if I told you that these moments, these patterns, these seemingly accidental collisions of circumstance are not random at all? What if the universe has been trying to get your attention, and you've been too busy, too distracted, too caught up in the noise to notice? Now, before you think I'm suggesting some cosmic postman is delivering little warning notes to your doorstep, let me clarify. The universe doesn't work with telegrams or smoke signals. It speaks in the language of pattern, of rhythm, of synchronicity. It speaks through the very fabric of your experience. And when you're heading in a direction that's out of tune with the fundamental nature of things, when you're pushing against the current rather than flowing with it. The universe has ways of getting your attention. Think about it this way. If you were walking toward the edge of a cliff, wouldn't you want someone to tap you on the shoulder? The universe is always tapping. The question is whether you're listening. Let's talk about what these signs actually look like. Because I think most of us, when we hear the word sign, imagine something dramatic. A burning bush, a voice from the heavens, a lightning bolt spelling out your name. But the universe is far more subtle than that. It whispers before it shouts. It nudges before it pushes. And if you ignore the whispers long enough, well, then you might find yourself face down in the mud, wondering how you got there. The first sign is resistance. Persistent, grinding, exhausting resistance. You wake up every morning with a sense of dread about the day ahead. Your work feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Your relationships feel strained, forced, like wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small. Everything requires tremendous effort, and nothing seems to flow naturally. This is not life being difficult for the sake of difficulty. This is the universe telling you that you're swimming against the current. You're trying to force something that doesn't want to be forced. You're clinging to a path that isn't yours to walk. The river wants to carry you in a certain direction, but you're gripping the rocks on the shore, insisting that you know better. Here's the thing. Life is supposed to have a certain ease to it. Not ease in the sense that everything is comfortable and nothing challenges you, but ease in the sense that when you're moving in harmony with your nature, with the way things actually work, there's a flow. Things open up. Doors appear. Opportunities present themselves. It's like sailing with the wind rather than against it. But when you're out of alignment, when you're forcing yourself to be someone you're not, or chasing something that was never meant for you, the universe puts obstacles in your path, not to punish you, but to redirect you, to get you to stop and ask, wait, why is this so hard? Why does this feel so wrong? The second sign is repetition. The same problems keep showing up in different disguises. You leave one job because of a difficult boss, only to find the exact same personality at the next company. You end a relationship because your partner wouldn't listen to you. And somehow your next relationship has the same issue. You move to a new city to escape your problems, only to discover that you packed them in your suitcase and brought them along. This is not coincidence. This is not bad luck. This is the universe holding up a mirror. It's saying, look, here's the pattern. Here's the thing you need to see about yourself. Here's the lesson you keep refusing to learn. The universe is remarkably patient, but it's also remarkably persistent. If there's something you need to understand, something you need to change, it will keep presenting you with the same situation over and over again until you finally get it. It's like being stuck on the same level of a game because you haven't learned the skill you need to progress. And the interesting thing is, the moment you actually learn the lesson, the moment you genuinely shift something inside yourself, the pattern disappears. Suddenly those difficult people stop appearing in your life. Those situations that used to trigger you don't bother you anymore. Not because the world changed, but because you changed. You learned what you needed to learn, and the universe said, all right, let's move on to the next chapter. The third sign is exhaustion. Not the kind of tired you feel after a good day's work. Not the pleasant fatigue of having used your body and mind fully, but a bone-deep, soul-crushing exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to cure. You wake up tired, you go to bed tired, everything feels heavy. This is your system telling you that something is fundamentally wrong. You're living in a way that drains you rather than sustains you. You're giving your energy to things that don't deserve it. You're maintaining a version of yourself that requires constant effort to uphold. Think about it. A tree doesn't get exhausted from being a tree. A bird doesn't tire itself out by being a bird. They simply are what they are, and in being what they are, they fulfill their nature effortlessly. But we humans have this peculiar habit of trying to be something we're not. We create elaborate personas, we maintain complicated lies, we twist ourselves into shapes that please others while betraying ourselves. And this requires enormous energy. When the universe sends you exhaustion, it's saying, stop, rest, reconsider. The way you're living is not sustainable. Something has to change. The fourth sign is disconnection. You feel increasingly isolated from the people around you. Conversations feel hollow. Your relationships lack depth. You go through the motions of social interaction, but there's no real connection, no genuine presence. You're there, but you're not really there. This happens when you've wandered too far from your authentic self. When you're wearing a mask for so long that you've forgotten what your real face looks like. People can sense this, even if they can't articulate it. There's something missing in your presence, something essential. And so genuine connection becomes impossible. Because connection requires vulnerability, authenticity, truth. The universe is fundamentally relational. Everything exists in relationship to everything else. The wave exists because of the ocean. The leaf exists because of the tree. You exist because of this vast web of relationships that stretches out in all directions. When you feel disconnected, it's a sign that you've forgotten this. You've started believing in your own separate existence, your own isolated self. And this belief is making you miserable. The fifth sign is chaos. Things keep breaking down. Your car stops working. Your computer crashes. Your plans fall apart at the last minute. One thing after another goes wrong, and you feel like you're constantly putting out fires. Now, sometimes things just break. That's the nature of the material world. But when you're experiencing a pattern of breakdown, when it feels like the universe is dismantling your carefully constructed life, piece by piece, pay attention. This is often the universe clearing away what no longer serves you. It's making space for something new. We cling so tightly to our structures, our plans, our ideas of how things should be, and sometimes the only way for something better to enter is for the old to fall apart. The farmer doesn't plant new seeds in a field that's already full of crops. First there must be clearing. First there must be space. The breakdown is not the problem. The breakdown is the preparation. The sixth sign is physical symptoms. Your body starts speaking up. Headaches, stomach problems, muscle tension that won't release. Your body is wise, much wiser than your thinking mind. It knows when something is wrong, long before your thoughts catch up. And when it can't get your attention any other way, it starts sending pain signals. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is information. It's your body's way of saying, hey, something needs to change here. We can't keep going like this. When you ignore the whispers, the body starts to shout. And if you ignore the shouting, well, then you might find yourself flat on your back, with no choice but to listen. The seventh sign is synchronicity. Strange coincidences start happening. You think of someone, and they call. You need information, and a book falls off the shelf right in front of you. You meet exactly the right person, at exactly the right moment. These moments of meaningful coincidence are like breadcrumbs, the universe leaving you a trail to follow. Carl Jung, that great explorer of the mind, spoke about synchronicity as evidence that there's more going on than we typically acknowledge. That beneath the surface chaos of life, there's a pattern, an order, a meaning. When synchronicities increase, it often means you're at a crossroads. The universe is trying to guide you, trying to show you which way to turn. But here's the crucial thing. These signs are not omens of doom. They're not the universe being cruel or punishing you. They're course corrections. They're love letters, written in the language of reality. The universe is not trying to hurt you. It's trying to wake you up. Think about a fever. When you have an infection, your body raises its temperature. This doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even painful. But the fever is not the problem. The fever is the solution. It's your body's way of fighting off what doesn't belong. In the same way, these signs, these disruptions, these uncomfortable moments are not the problem. They're your life's immune system activating. Something toxic has entered, something that doesn't belong, and your system is working to eliminate it.
Right.
The question is, what do you do when you notice these signs? Because noticing is only the first step. You could notice them and then promptly ignore them, which is what most people do. We're remarkably good at seeing what we don't want to see, and then pretending we didn't see it. The response required is not dramatic action. It's not about quitting your job tomorrow, or ending your marriage, or selling all your possessions and moving to a monastery. Those might be the right moves for some people in some situations, but dramatic external changes, without internal understanding, usually just create more problems. The response required is stillness. Stop. Be quiet. Listen. The universe is speaking, but you have to create space to hear it. You have to turn down the volume on all the noise, all the constant chatter, all the opinions and expectations and demands that fill your head from morning to night. Sit with yourself. Not with your phone, not with a book, not with any distraction. Just sit. And in that sitting, ask yourself honestly, what am I being told here? What am I refusing to see? What am I clinging to that needs to be released? The answers won't come as words. They'll come as knowing, as recognition, as a feeling of yes, that's it. Your body will relax slightly. Something that was tight will loosen. This is the sign that you've touched truth. And then, once you've heard the message, once you've understood what's being asked of you, the work is simple but not easy. You have to act on what you know. You have to make the change even when it's uncomfortable, even when people don't understand, even when you're not sure how it will all work out. This is where most people get stuck. They receive the message, they understand what needs to happen, and then they do nothing. They go back to their old patterns, their old ways, their comfortable misery. And so the signs must get louder, the whispers become shouts, the nudges become shoves, but it doesn't have to be this way. You can choose to listen to the whispers. You can choose to respond when the universe taps gently on your shoulder, rather than waiting for it to knock you flat. Because here's what I want you to understand. The universe is not separate from you. You are not a tiny, isolated self, navigating a hostile cosmos. You are the universe experiencing itself in human form. When the universe warns you, it's you warning yourself. Your deeper wisdom, your connection to something larger than your small ego self, is trying to get through to your conscious awareness. So these signs, these warnings, they're not coming from outside. They're bubbling up from inside. From that place in you that knows, that's always known, what's true and what's false, what serves life and what doesn't. The question becomes, are you willing to trust yourself? Are you willing to trust the deeper knowing, even when it contradicts what your thinking mind insists is true? Are you willing to follow where life wants to take you, even when it means letting go of what you thought you wanted? This is the great adventure of being human. Not knowing where you're going, but trusting the process anyway. Not clinging to a fixed path, but being willing to be surprised, to be redirected, to be shown something you never imagined. The signs are there. They've always been there. The universe has been speaking to you in 1,000 different ways since the day you were born. The only question is whether you're finally ready to listen. Because once you start listening, once you start responding, once you start living in alignment with what's true rather than what's comfortable or expected or safe, everything changes. Not necessarily in the ways you imagine, but in ways that matter far more deeply. You stop fighting. You stop forcing. You stop exhausting yourself, trying to swim against the current. And instead, you let the river carry you. You let life live itself through you. You become like water, flowing around obstacles rather than crashing against them. Always moving, always changing, always finding the path of least resistance. This is what the universe has been trying to tell you all along. Stop resisting. Stop clinging. Stop pretending. Just be what you are, where you are with what you have. And trust that this is exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you're meant to become. The signs are not threats, they're invitations. The universe is not warning you away from danger, it's calling you toward your true life. The question is, will you answer? You see, there is something very curious happening right now. Those who have begun to wake up, those who have started to see through the game, are quietly disappearing. Not with speeches or noise, but simply stepping back, no longer interested in the usual performance. If you felt this yourself, if ordinary conversations, social events, and small performances have started to feel unbearable, what I'm about to say may ease you. This isn't a disorder. It isn't antisocial behavior. It's what naturally happens when a person wakes up. By waking up, I don't mean reading a few books on philosophy or having a nice idea about oneness. I mean that moment when you suddenly notice that most of what people are doing is sleepwalking. They move around as if on automatic, playing roles they didn't choose, repeating lines they didn't write. And when you're asleep yourself, this doesn't seem strange at all. You blend in, you talk about nothing and think it matters. You care about other people's opinions and believe they're important. You chase things with no real substance and call it success. But when the veil drops, everything shifts. It's like walking out of a dark cinema into daylight. You can try to go back and enjoy the film, but you can't anymore because you know it's just a projection. You've seen the screen for what it is. That's what's happening to people who are waking up now. They find they can't keep participating in the collective dream, not because they think they're better than anyone else, but because their system simply can't accept what it once believed. Society runs on an agreement, a shared decision to pretend the characters we play are who we are, to pretend that the opinions we've absorbed are personal truths, to pretend that all this rushing and seriousness is actually leading somewhere important. The whole play only works if everyone stays in character. But when someone wakes up, they stop playing. They forget the script. They look directly at the stage itself. And this makes others uncomfortable, because the awakened can see beneath the surface. They see the fear behind the confidence, the emptiness behind the busyness. The fact that most arguments aren't about what people think they're about at all. And so they step away, not out of rejection, but because they can no longer pretend the game is real. When someone shouts their outrage into the public square, the awakened person doesn't see an enemy. They see unconscious material looking for somewhere to land. When society splits itself into us and them, the awakened person understands that both sides are simply projections colliding with each other. And once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending it's serious business. You can't take sides with the same heat and certainty as before, because you know it's all just a way of avoiding the mirror. So what does one do in that position? You withdraw. Not because you've stopped caring, not because you hate people, but because staying in the game demands that you deny what you've come to understand. Every conversation asks you to act as if you haven't seen what you've seen. Every social situation expects you to wear an older version of yourself, a mask that no longer fits. And after enough time, something in you refuses. It simply says, stop. Stop pretending. Stop shrinking yourself just to keep up the act. Go where you can actually breathe. And let's be clear, this is not about avoiding life. It's not spiritual bypassing. It's not running away from the world because it's too hard. It's something much simpler and far more honest. It's the recognition that staying in unconscious environments slowly harms consciousness itself. It's like putting a living plant in a dark room. It might survive for a while, but eventually it withers. Being surrounded by people who are asleep isn't just uncomfortable, it's draining. You spend an enormous amount of energy holding your center while everything around you pulls you off balance. You filter out projections, resist getting swept into emotional currents, and keep your awareness clear while others drift in fog. And no one sees the work you're doing because it's invisible, but it's real, and it costs you energy. Eventually, you realize you're spending all your strength just trying to stay awake in places that keep pulling you back to sleep. And that's when the choice appears. You choose consciousness over belonging, truth over approval, your own clarity over the comfort of being accepted by those who can't yet see what you see. That's when the disappearing begins. The first thing to go is the noise. Social media, for example, becomes unbearable because you can feel its nature. It's a machine built to keep people unconscious. Scrolling, judging, comparing, getting outraged, getting distracted. If you're awake, it's like standing in a river of sewage. So, you stop. You log out, you delete the apps, you stop feeding the machine. And without anyone noticing, hours of your life quietly return to you. Then you start leaving social circles, not with resentment, not with grand announcements. You simply stop showing up. Because you begin to see that most social spaces are stages. People are performing their lives, performing success, performing confidence, performing happiness, performing their opinions, and you can no longer play that part. Your real self has emerged, and it has no interest in putting on a mask. Then you leave certain relationships, not because you suddenly stopped caring about people, but because many of those bonds were built on a version of you that no longer exists. The sleeping version. Once you've woken up, you find there's no shared language anymore. You're no longer living in the same world. They're still speaking from inside the dream, and you're no longer in it. Then comes the career. That's often the hardest part. Because society has tied identity to work so tightly that leaving a job can feel like leaving yourself. But when you awaken, something changes. You can't play along with a system you can see through. You can't pretend to care about things that don't matter to you anymore. You can't sell your energy to roles that require you to stay unconscious. So, you leave. Sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly, but you do leave. Because to stay would mean to slowly suffocate the very awareness you fought to bring into being. Now, here's the part most people misunderstand. They think disappearing from the noise means you'll end up isolated, lonely, depressed. But for someone who's awake, the opposite happens. In solitude, the loneliness ends. Because loneliness isn't about being without people, it's about being unseen among them. Aloneness is different. Aloneness is clarity. It's the space where you no longer have to twist yourself into a shape that fits. When the awakened person withdraws, they discover something most never realize. They were never truly with other people in the first place. Physical proximity is not connection. Real connection happens only when consciousness meets consciousness. And when you're awake in a room full of sleeping people, there's no one to meet. But in solitude, away from the noise and the endless performing, you finally meet yourself. Not the version you rehearsed for others, not the mask that was trained to fit into the world. but the living, breathing awareness behind all of that. And that isn't lonely, that is coming home. In that quiet space, you can finally hear your own thoughts without the static of 1,000 other voices. You can feel your own emotions without carrying everyone else's. You can discover what you actually want, what you actually believe, who you actually are. This is what I call the hermit phase. And it's not optional. It's essential. You cannot transform while clinging to every old connection and expectation. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly in the middle of a crowd. It withdraws, it cocoons, it goes silent for a while. And in the same way, awakening requires a period of retreat, not as escape, but as integration. This is when all the unconscious material you've carried for years finally has space to surface, to be seen and to be released. They are healing the damage that came from years of pretending to be someone they were not. They are gathering the strength to stand on their own ground, even when the rest of the world is still asleep. And this is no small task. It is much harder than staying unconscious. Because when you are awake, you lose the luxury of blame. You can no longer project your pain onto others. You can no longer hide from yourself in busyness, noise, or drama. Everything you've buried comes to the surface, and you must face it. No one can do that for you. But here's the strange, beautiful thing. Once you've walked through that darkness, once you've integrated what you've avoided, made peace with your shadow, and found what's real inside yourself, you stop depending on the world for your sense of reality. You stop needing approval. You stop begging for belonging. You no longer need the crowd to tell you who you are. You have something better. You found yourself. And from that place, if you choose to return to society, you return differently. Not to dive back into the noise, but to offer a quiet alternative. You become what I call a border dweller. Someone who stands with one foot in the sleeping world and one in the awakened. You are present, but not absorbed. Available, but not dependent. Engaged, but not entangled. Maybe you help those who are just beginning to stir. Maybe you create art that cuts through the surface and touches something real. Maybe you speak or write in ways that remind others of what they've forgotten. Or maybe you simply live your life so honestly that your very presence becomes a quiet question in the minds of others. Is there another way to be? But you never go back to the old game. You can't. Once you've tasted awareness, you can't return to sleep. Once you've felt your authentic self, you can't go back to performing a part. Once you've seen through the illusion, pretending becomes impossible. Now, some will say, isn't this selfish? Shouldn't we stay and try to wake everyone else up? Shouldn't we fight to fix the system from the inside? But here's the plain truth. You can't give what you don't have. If you haven't awakened fully yourself, if you haven't done the hard work of integrating your own shadow, then you're just another unconscious person trying to wake up other unconscious people. And that only spreads more confusion, no matter how noble your intentions. The most honest thing you can do for the world is to wake up yourself. Do the deep, uncomfortable work. Become genuinely conscious. And only then, from that steady ground, can you offer something real to those who are ready. And understand this. Most people aren't ready. Most don't want to wake up. They want the familiar dream, the roles, the comfort of the play. And that's their right. Your role is not to drag anyone out of their sleep. Your role is to wake up and to quietly make yourself available to those who are beginning to stir. That's why the awakened disappear. Not out of bitterness or disdain, but because they need space to breathe. To live without having to constantly shrink themselves to make others comfortable.
They find each other in quiet corners, in small circles, away from the stage. They build small pockets of sanity in a world still lost in its performance. And this isn't abandonment, it's responsibility. The world doesn't need more people reinforcing the dream. It needs people who've walked through it, woken up, and found something real. It needs living examples of authenticity. So if you feel the pull to disappear, if the noise, the games, and the performances no longer hold your attention, if you can no longer find yourself in the crowd, then listen to that pull. That is not weakness. That is your soul asking for space to grow. Do not resist it. Do not feel guilty. Do not force yourself to stay where you no longer belong. Withdraw. Rest. Be alone without apology. This is not permanent. You will return, but when you do, you won't be the same. You will return whole, clear, real. Someone who can offer consciousness instead of more performance. Use that solitude wisely. Do the work. Face your own darkness. Find what's real inside you. Because what the world actually needs is not more noise, not more preaching, not more performance, but people who have actually awakened. The spiritually awake are disappearing because they must. Because consciousness cannot deepen in places built to keep people asleep. Because authenticity cannot survive in constant performance. Because truth can't be found in collective lies. So if you are one of them, let yourself go. Withdraw without shame. Disappear without apology. Stand alone without feeling alone. Trust that this is an old pattern, older than any religion or philosophy. The way every human being who has ever awakened has walked. The caterpillar must dissolve before it can fly. The seed must break before it becomes the tree. And the awakened person must step away from the crowd before they can offer something real to it. This is not the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of consciousness that isn't borrowed from anyone else. The beginning of life lived from the center rather than from the script. And though the world may not understand it yet, it will. When it begins to stir, and when it does, people like you will already be there. Not as saviors, not as saints, but as quiet beacons. Pioneers. Carriers of something real. And that is enough. There is a curious paradox, which is, to love is unconditional, but to be loved is conditional. By the time one has crossed the 30s or 40s, they have seen enough of life to know that the fairy tales of youth were, at best, charming illusion. One begins to understand that love does not appear as a reward for virtue, nor is it guaranteed to remain, simply because you have been loyal, patient, or deserving. Some have poured themselves, drop by drop, into the vessel of another's life, only to watch it leak away through fingers that once clung to them. Others still dwell beneath the same roof with their chosen companion, yet feel as though they have become a stranger at their own table. And there are those who have wandered from heart to heart, thinking that the next embrace, the next yes, would finally fill the hollow within, only to find the emptiness echo back at them. You begin to wonder why something as natural as love has become such a labyrinth of conditions, unspoken bargains, and quiet disappointments. You sense that somewhere, beneath all the poetry and promises, there is a truth you have been avoiding. For love, as it is sold to us, is not love at all, but something dressed in its garment. And here, perhaps, lies the seed of our quiet discontent. We have confused the appearance of love with love itself, the structure that holds it, with the living thing it was meant to carry. From our earliest breath, the world whispered its bargain into our ears. Love is something to be earned. Behave as you are told, and you will be cherished. Fulfill the needs of another, and you will be kept. Offer beauty, strength, usefulness, devotion, and the reward will be love. But this is not love. It is a transaction masquerading as tenderness. It is the polite exchange of commodities between two people who have been taught to call their bargain romance. You see, a bargain can hold people together, but it cannot nourish them. Like two merchants bound by contract, they remain so long as the terms are met. And when they are not, they part. No matter how many years have passed, no matter how deeply your lives have entwined, the invisible ledger will one day be brought to the table and the sums will be counted. Many men and women wake in the middle years of life to the cold recognition that what they once believed was love was only an arrangement. It might have been cloaked in vows before God, adorned with flowers, or sealed with the trembling promises of youth, but the heart of it was a simple pact. I will give you what you desire if you will give me what I desire. And when the giving stops, whether through weariness, age, illness, or simple change, the warmth fades. The eyes that once sparkled at your arrival now glance past you as if you had become little more than a shadow in the room. We were never told as children that such love is a performance and that performance is end. When you mistake the bargain for love itself, you spend your years in quiet exhaustion. You give your time, your loyalty, your devotion, believing this will secure the thing your soul longs for. But what you have secured is not love, only the continuance of an arrangement. And so it happens that many, after years of faithful giving, find themselves bewildered when the warmth fades. Not because they cease to care, but because life has moved, as all things do. Nothing stands still. Even stone wears away. Even plastic warps with time. The man or woman you first knew has changed, just as you have, and the bond built upon fixed terms begins to strain under the weight of impermanence. And there is another truth, more difficult to swallow. When the demands of the bargain are no longer met, the mask will fall. In the absence of what they sought from you, be it comfort, affirmation, or security, some will show you who they truly are. The tenderness you thought was theirs by nature may vanish, revealing not cruelty perhaps, but a hollowness where love was never rooted. You may have felt it, the gaze that no longer lingers, the laughter replaced by a cold and watchful silence. The shift is so quiet, you can almost convince yourself it isn't there. But in that stillness you see it. You were cherished not for your being, but for the service you rendered. And when such a union falters, it does not simply end. It unravels something inside you. It leaves you staring at the ruins, asking whether you were ever truly loved or only ever necessary. Love is not a bargain, nor is it a chain. It is not, I will if you will, nor the silent counting of who has given more. Such things belong to the marketplace, not to the heart. True love is a freedom, the liberty to give without ledger or demand. It is to be fully present with another, not to bind them, but to care for them, simply because the caring itself is joy. It is a gift given without the shadow of a contract, without the fear that it must be returned in equal measure. But here lies the paradox. Such love cannot be given by one who is starving for it. The heart that is desperate to be loved back will always, in some hidden way, attach strings to its giving. It will watch, it will measure, it will wait for the return. And when it does not come, bitterness will grow like ivy through the soul. You cannot love freely until you have ceased to beg for love. And you cannot cease to beg until you have found within yourself a source that does not run dry. That source is not in another's eyes, nor in their approval. It is in the quiet knowing that you are already the child of the very life that breathed you into being. Call it God. Call it the eternal. Call it the nameless mystery. It has loved you into existence before you could earn or deserve a thing. Look at the sun. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. To know this is to stand unshaken whether others love you or turn away. Then, and only then, can you give love as the sun gives light, not to be thanked, not to be owed, but because it cannot help itself. To love is your freedom. No one can take it from you. It is the act of your own being, the overflow of the life that moves through you. You may give it to one, to many, or to the whole world, but it remains yours to give, to be loved. Now that is another matter that is never in your keeping. You cannot command it, purchase it, or reason it into being. Love offered to you is a gift of its own accord, arriving when it will, leaving when it must. It is as the wind that brushes your cheek. You may open your arms to it, but you cannot hold it there forever. If love is given to you, receive it with gratitude. Drink of it while it flows, but never clutch at it, as though it were the last drop in the world. For the moment you try to drag it from another's hands, it ceases to be love and becomes something else, obligation, pity, or bondage. And remember this, you are already loved, not by the fickle tides of human affection, but by the source from which you came. It breathed you into life without condition, without demand. To see this is to know you are never wholly bereft. If you wish for love from others, it must begin here in loving yourself, not in the shallow sense of indulgence, but in the deep sense of accepting your own being without reserve. For a heart at peace with itself no longer begs, it invites, and when two such hearts meet, their love is not a trade, but a meeting of rivers, each full from its own spring. When two people who have learned to dwell at peace within themselves come together, it is not to be filled, for their cups are already full. They do not arrive at each other's door as beggars, bowls outstretched. They come as givers, carrying abundance that spills over the rim. In such a union, there is no bargaining. No one is keeping score, no quiet dread of who owes whom. Love is not given to earn, nor withheld to punish. It moves as naturally as breath, as the tide that rises and falls without being told. Here, the joy is not in taking, but in sharing. There is no hunger in the eyes, only light. One gives not because the other demands it, but because giving is the most natural expression of their being. And so both are fed, not by the draining of one into the other, but by the overflow of each. This is the only love that does not rot into resentment. For where there is no emptiness to be filled, there is no fear of losing. When two full hearts meet, they are free to let each other be, to grow, to change, to wander and return, without the grasping that turns love into a cage. And yet, such a meeting is rare, for most search the world to find another who will complete them, not knowing they were never half a person to begin with. Only when you drink deeply from your own well will you find another who drinks from theirs. And together, you will not merely survive, you will overflow. The world you meet each day is not a stranger. It is yourself in another form. You cannot draw from a well what is not in it, nor can you meet in others what you have not yet met. In your own heart, if you carry a hollowness within, you will find yourself surrounded by those who take, not because the world conspires against you, but because nature fills a vacuum. Those who have nothing will seek from you what you have not given to yourself, and you will mistake their hunger for love. If, on the other hand, you move through life with a fullness of being, you will meet those who also carry an abundance. They will not clutch at you or drain you, for they are not living on scraps. Instead, you will find an ease in their company, a recognition as though you had always known them. This is not a mystical trick, nor some hidden cosmic law, but a simple truth of human meeting. The depth to which you have faced yourself becomes the depth to which you can meet another. Most quarrels in love are not between two people, but between the unexamined shadows each has brought along. So, before you go searching for kindness, tenderness, or devotion in the eyes of another, turn inward and meet your own gaze, not to condemn yourself, nor to tally your flaws, but to make the acquaintance of the stranger you have long carried in silence. For it is this hidden self who extends the invitation to others, this unseen presence, who will decide whether the love you meet will be a feast to your soul or the slow unraveling of it. When this truth takes root in you, do not hoard it. Place it gently in the hands of your children, for they are stepping into the same illusion that once ensnared you. Teach them that love is not the trembling romance of songs, nor the solemn bargain sealed before altar and law. It is the willingness to give without the shadow of a demand, to care without the constant fear of loss. If they do not learn this, they will build their homes upon sand and watch them crumble. But if they do, they will stand on rock, and love will not be a cage, but a sky. The question is not, how can I find someone to love me? But the question is, how can I become someone who overflows? For when love is no longer a plea but a gift, when joy is no longer chained to another's approval, you will see that to love and be loved is not something to chase. It is the way you already are. You are not a half searching for the other half. You are whole. And from that wholeness, love flows, finding those who recognize it instantly. Then love ceases to be a hunt or a bargain or a desperate keeping. It becomes the quiet, steady light of the sun, needing nothing in return, yet warming the whole sky.
There's a strange thing that happens to many who step onto what they call the spiritual path. It begins, as all searches do, with a feeling that something is missing, a quiet ache that ordinary life can no longer satisfy. You sense there's something deeper beneath the noise, something vast and wordless that you've somehow forgotten. So, quite innocently, You begin to look, you read books, you listen to teachers, you meditate, chant, fast, and strive. You chase stillness as though it were a prize waiting at the top of a long staircase. And you tell yourself, once I find it, I'll finally be free. But what you don't realize yet is that the very one who's seeking that freedom is the same one who feels trapped. It's like a man trying to run away from his own shadow. The faster he runs, the more it follows. That is the first trap, you see, the trap of seeking. For most people, the search begins as a reaction to discomfort. You feel restless, lost, unsatisfied, and you imagine that if only you could wake up, life would stop hurting. So you turn the search for peace into another form of struggle, a more elegant kind of ambition. You no longer chase success or status. Now you chase enlightenment. But the movement is the same. The seeker and the businessman, the ascetic and the addict, both are running from the same unease. And so long as you keep seeking, you confirm the very absence you're trying to escape. You say, I am not yet whole. I must find something to complete me. But wholeness was never something to find. It was the silence that was looking. The irony, of course, is that you don't stop seeking because you fail. You stop because you finally exhaust yourself. You grow tired of chasing experiences, tired of comparing your peace to someone else's. And in that moment of giving up, the strangest thing happens. You notice that stillness was here all along. When the searching stops, awareness begins. And yet, even that realization, profound as it may be, carries its own subtle danger. Because now you begin to think, I understand, I've seen through the illusion, and you quietly start to build a new identity around it. You become the one who knows. This is the second trap, the trap of identity. You see, the ego is not destroyed by awakening. It merely changes shape. Before, it was the self that wanted wealth, pleasure, and importance. Now, it becomes the self that wants purity, stillness, and enlightenment. The same actor, just in new costume. You start saying things like, I'm learning to detach, or I no longer let things affect me. But listen closely to the tone behind those words. There's still a subtle I, a center that takes pride in its calmness. You might even begin to feel quietly superior, as though the rest of the world was still asleep while you've seen the truth. But that, too, is just another dream. The awakened ego is more dangerous than the materialistic one, because it hides its pride behind the mask of humility. You start performing spirituality, mistaking the gestures for the essence. You meditate not to be still, but to appear still. You speak softly, not out of peace, but out of control. You post quotes about detachment, all while desperately wanting to be seen as someone who has let go. And so you've traded one identity for another. You've escaped the prison of the world only to build a more beautiful cage in its place. But the soul, you see, cannot breathe in a cage, not even a golden one. True freedom doesn't arrive when you've perfected yourself. It arrives when you no longer need to. It's when you can laugh at your own seriousness, when you can say, there I go again, trying to be enlightened. Because the real awakening isn't about becoming special, it's about becoming ordinary again, without shame. Most people don't realize how exhausting the spiritual performance is. Always being aware, always monitoring your thoughts, always maintaining that serene mask. It's tiring to pretend to be peaceful all the time. And life, being infinitely patient, eventually exposes the act. One day, you lose your temper, or you cry, or you feel jealous, and suddenly you think you've failed, but you haven't failed at all. You've just become real again. When you stop trying to be the enlightened version of yourself, awareness becomes effortless, because awareness was never something you could lose. It's not a possession, it's your nature. The great mistake is thinking awakening is about improvement. It's not. It's about recognition. The difference is subtle but profound. Improvement says, I'll work on myself until I am pure. Recognition says, I see that even in my imperfection I am whole. When that recognition dawns, even your flaws begin to look sacred. And this brings us, quite naturally, to the third trap, the trap of goodness. It's easy to see why this one seduces so many. After all, what could possibly be wrong with trying to be good? You try to be kind, compassionate, understanding, and for a while, it feels right. But eventually you notice a tension behind your virtue, a quiet strain, as though you're forcing something unnatural. You smile when you don't mean it. You forgive when you still feel the sting. You tell yourself a good person wouldn't be angry. So you repress your anger and call that forgiveness. But the truth is, real goodness doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't come from discipline. It flows from understanding. When you truly see how interconnected all things are, kindness becomes spontaneous. You don't try to be kind. You can't help it. When you're genuinely at peace, goodness happens by itself like a flower blooming in the sun. Trying to be good, on the other hand, is often just spiritual pride in disguise. You want to see yourself as virtuous, or you want others to see you that way. But the moment you say, I'm a good person, you've already missed it. Because the moment you identify with goodness, you also create its opposite, those who are not. And so judgment quietly returns, now painted in moral colors. Real compassion, you see, doesn't divide. It doesn't say, you are asleep and I am awake. It doesn't say, I forgive you because I'm above you. It simply sees, and in that seeing, there is understanding. To be truly good, you must forget about being good. The universe doesn't moralize. It simply moves, birth and death, pleasure and pain, all part of one motion. And to awaken is to join that motion without resistance. You might still feel anger, sadness, or desire, but you no longer cling to them. You let them arise and fall like waves, without judging the tide. And slowly, you realize that goodness isn't a destination. It's what remains when you stop pretending to be better than you are. That's the hidden beauty of awakening. It strips away every identity you thought you needed, the seeker, the saint, the savior, until only life itself remains, raw and unfiltered. After all this striving to be good, after all the effort to be still, to be aware, to be pure, a quiet fatigue begins to set in. You start to wonder why, after all these meditations, affirmations, and insights, the peace never seems to stay. You've had glimpses, moments of clarity, even bliss, but they vanish as quickly as they come. And so, once again, you begin to measure. You think, maybe I'm making progress, but slowly. This is the fourth trap, the trap of progress. You see, the modern mind is trained to think in lines and ladders. Everything must be a journey upward, from ignorance to knowledge, from chaos to order, from darkness to light. But awareness doesn't move like that. It doesn't travel. It reveals. You are not climbing toward awakening, you are awakening to what has never moved. But we love the idea of progress. We like to think there's a point somewhere ahead where we'll finally arrive. So we create stages, beginner, intermediate, advanced. We measure our calmness, our mindfulness, our ability to stay present. We grade ourselves spiritually the same way we once graded ourselves in school. But can you see the irony? You've turned the infinite into a curriculum. You've taken something as boundless as consciousness and squeezed it into a chart of self-improvement. Progress assumes time, and awakening is the end of time. It's the collapse of the idea that you are on your way anywhere at all. When you truly understand that, progress loses its meaning, because in this very moment, not a future one, you are already complete. There's nothing to add, nothing to remove. Only the illusion of movement remains, yet the illusion is necessary for a while. It's part of the play. You can't rush the unlearning of effort. Even when you see through the traps, the habits remain the habit to measure, to compare, to check your level. So, what do? You simply notice it happening, and you laugh. That laughter is freedom. You stop treating awakening as an exam and start seeing it as a dance, a rhythm between remembering and forgetting. There will be days of clarity and days of confusion, moments of light and moments of darkness. But the one who sees both is untouched by either. Awakening is not about sustaining one state forever. It's about realizing that you are not the states. When you stop grading your awareness, peace sneaks up on you. It comes not because you earned it, but because you stopped resisting the way things are. And that's when the final illusion often arrives, the one most subtle and seductive of all. It's what I call the trap of escape. After seeing through the other traps, the seeking, the ego, the moral striving, the measuring, a new desire arises, the desire to transcend. You want to be done with it, all the messiness, the emotions, the pain of being human. You want to rise above it, to live only in serenity. But that desire, too, is born from resistance. It is the ego's last disguise, the one who has renounced. You might find yourself thinking, I'm no longer interested in worldly things. You avoid conflict, withdraw from people, stop engaging with the pulse of life. You call this detachment, but it's not detachment, it's avoidance. You haven't transcended the world, you've simply hidden from it. And life, with infinite compassion, won't let you stay there for long. It will send you something, a heartbreak, a loss, a sudden beauty that pulls you back into the human experience. Because you're not meant to escape the world, you're meant to embody it consciously. The ocean doesn't reject its waves, it becomes them. Enlightenment isn't floating above life, it's sinking so deeply into it that you realize there was never a separation to begin with. To awaken is to fall in love with the ordinary, to look at a cup of tea, a tired face, a passing cloud, and feel the whole universe moving there. It's to understand that your search for the divine was always a misunderstanding, because there's nothing in existence that isn't divine. The sacred was never elsewhere. It was here, hidden behind the eyes that were looking. So long as you believe enlightenment will take you out of the world, you will keep missing the holiness of being in it. The truth, you see, is far simpler. You are not here to escape the dream. You are here to wake up within it. And perhaps that's the real purpose of these traps, not to imprison you forever, but to teach you how easily you build your own walls. Every trap is also a mirror. Every illusion, a teacher in disguise. You don't need to destroy them. You only need to see them for what they are. Because the moment you recognize a trap, it loses its power. The moment you stop struggling to escape it, you're already free. Freedom isn't somewhere outside the maze. It's the realization that the walls were never real. When you truly understand that, there's nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove. Even the idea of spirituality begins to dissolve. You stop being a seeker or a knower or a teacher. You become simply alive. And in that aliveness, you notice something profound. Everything is exactly as it should be. The people still chasing, the ones pretending, the ones judging, they're all playing their parts perfectly, just as you once did. So you stop correcting them. You stop trying to wake anyone up. You just live quietly, freely, and deeply awake to the simple fact of being. That is where all paths lead, though none can take you there. Not by effort, not by method, but by the soft collapse of everything you thought you needed to do. And when that collapse finally happens, when all the striving and seeking fade, something breathtaking appears in their place. Not a grand enlightenment, not a cosmic explosion of understanding, but something humble, intimate, familiar, life. Just this, the sound of your breath, the warmth of sunlight on skin, the quiet laughter of knowing that you never had to try so hard, That's when you realize the greatest truth of all. You were never spiritually stuck. You were only pretending to be trapped so you could one day discover the joy of being free. When you've spent long enough searching for freedom, a curious thing begins to happen. You stop believing in escape. The word freedom itself begins to dissolve because you start to see that it always implied a cage. And when the idea of a cage fades, what's left? Only openness, only life. But this doesn't feel like a sudden revelation. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or angels or cosmic fireworks. It comes quietly, like a sigh at the end of a long day, a deep exhale into what has always been here. You find yourself smiling at your own seriousness. You remember how hard you tried to meditate correctly, how you measured your breathing, your posture, your progress. You remember how you used to feel proud when you felt detached, and guilty when you felt desire. And you can't help but laugh, not mockingly, but tenderly, because you see that all of it, every attempt, every failure, every contradiction, was part of the unfolding. That laughter, that gentle self-forgiveness, is the beginning of true understanding. You realize that life never demanded perfection from you. It only asked that you live it. You were never supposed to master existence, only to experience it. And once you see that, everything relaxes. The war with yourself ends. You stop trying to control your mind, and it quiets on its own. You stop trying to force peace, and peace begins to bloom like a wildflower in the cracks of your effort. You stop pretending to be enlightened, and suddenly, even your confusion feels sacred, because you finally see you were never outside the flow, not even for a moment. The river of being carries everything, your clarity, your doubt, your laughter, your tears. Nothing is out of place. This is what I mean by letting the traps fall away. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to dismantle them one by one. You simply stop identifying with the one who was trapped. It's like waking up from a dream in which you were drowning. The moment you open your eyes, you realize there was never any water. And yet, that dream taught you something about fear, about grasping, about surrender. So you don't regret it. You just smile, stretch, and move on with your day. That's what the journey is. A long, beautiful dream of forgetting and remembering. Once the illusions fall away, something wonderful begins to happen. Not mystical or dramatic, but wonderfully simple. Ordinary moments start to shimmer again. You notice the way sunlight moves through the trees, the sound of wind brushing against leaves, the rhythm of footsteps on pavement. You begin to see how much beauty there is in things that ask for nothing, the scent of rain, a stray cat crossing the road, the quiet hum of the world going on without your interference. You start to live without trying to be aware, because awareness has become effortless. And this, you realize, is what awakening was always pointing to. Not an achievement, not a transformation, but a homecoming. You were never meant to transcend being human. You were meant to remember how divine it already is. That's the ultimate irony. You searched for transcendence only to find that what you were trying to escape was sacred all along. When you stop rejecting life, even your imperfections begin to glow. The same anger that once felt like failure now feels like energy moving through you. The sadness that once seemed unbearable now feels like depth. The emptiness that frightened you becomes a vast sky where everything can appear and disappear freely. You no longer cling to emotions as proof of identity. You no longer resist them as signs of weakness. You simply allow them, like weather passing through the open sky of awareness. And when you do that, when you truly stop judging what arises, you notice that every emotion, no matter how painful, carries a hidden tenderness. Each feeling is life reaching out, saying, "Look, you are still alive. You still feel." It's all part of the same pulse. You begin to realize that the point of spirituality was never to rise above emotion, but to become intimate with it, to hold joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, all in the same vast embrace. That is the art of letting go. Not throwing things away, but holding them so lightly that they can dance. Now, there's something subtle that happens when you live like this. You stop taking ownership of the movement of life. You stop thinking, I am doing this, or I am becoming that. Instead, there's simply doing, simply being. The river moves, and you are the river. The wind blows, and you are the wind. You don't stand apart from life anymore. You are its expression. And because there's no longer a you trying to hold life together, life begins to unfold naturally, without conflict, without resistance. Things fall away when they're ready. People leave when they must. Joy comes, sorrow follows, then joy again. But now, none of it threatens you, because you no longer cling to permanence. You see that impermanence isn't the enemy of peace, it's the reason peace exists. There's a certain peace that comes not from answers, but from finally giving up the need for them. You stop demanding explanations from existence. You stop arguing with the mystery. And the mystery, for the first time, starts to feel like home. You no longer need to understand why things happen the way they do. You trust that they unfold according to a rhythm too vast for the mind to measure. That trust, that quiet faith in life, is what freedom truly is. Freedom isn't the ability to choose every path. It's the ease of walking whichever one appears before you. And in that freedom, you rediscover innocence. You begin to laugh again, not because life is easy, but because you finally stopped expecting it to be anything else. You see that your search was never for enlightenment, it was for simplicity. To be able to wake up in the morning, breathe, and know that this is enough. To eat when you're hungry, to rest when you're tired, to love without strategy, to lose without resentment, to die without regret. That is awakening in its purest form, not fireworks, not transcendence, but ease. If there is a final lesson, it's this. Nothing you let go of is ever truly lost. The illusions fall away, but the truth they disguised remains. The masks crumble, but the face beneath them has always been smiling. The traps dissolve, and you realize they were never meant to imprison you, only to teach you how not to hold on. And once you've learned that, there's nowhere left to go, and nothing left to become. There is only this, the eternal now, breathing through you. You can still meditate, still read, still teach, or pray, but not out of need. You do them as the ocean makes waves, not because it must, but because it can. The wise man still chops wood and carries water, but now he knows the one chopping, the one watching, and the one being chopped are not three, they are one. Life was never asking you to awaken. It was awakening through you, in its own time, in its own way. And perhaps, in the end, that's the only realization there is. You were never spiritually stuck. You were just unfolding. And in the moment you stop trying to move forward, you discover you were never behind. You were home all along. There comes a time when even your will begins to tremble. You've been pushing for so long that you can't quite remember what it felt like not to. Every morning you wake up and there is that quiet command inside your head to try again, to improve, to hold yourself together. You tell yourself you have no choice, that stopping would mean failure, that rest must be earned, that somewhere deep down you can feel that you're becoming tired in a different way now. Not the tiredness that sleep fixes, but the kind that touches your bones, the kind that whispers, enough. Most people believe exhaustion comes from doing too much, but that's not quite true. It comes from doing what was never really yours to do. It comes from carrying identities that don't fit, from keeping promises you never actually made, from fighting to be someone you think you should be. Life was never meant to feel like constant resistance. Yet somehow we've turned even peace into a project. The modern mind has made effort into a virtue. We are told that every good thing must be earned, happiness, love, rest, even awakening. You must meditate correctly, breathe correctly, forgive correctly, live correctly. But this idea of correctness is precisely what keeps you tense. You start to treat existence like an exam, checking whether you're passing or failing at being alive. And the more you check, the more life slips through your fingers. There is a story I like about a man who went to a wise teacher and said, "I want to be at peace." The teacher smiled and said, "Drop the I, that's ego. Drop the want, that's desire. What's left?" The man sat in silence for a long while. What was left was peace itself. You see, it's not that you don't know how to rest. It's that you've forgotten that resting doesn't require permission. The tree doesn't negotiate with the wind before it sways. The river doesn't ask if it's flowing correctly. Only the human mind questions its right to be at ease. When you've been trying for too long, your own being begins to rebel. That rebellion doesn't come as anger or loudness. It comes as numbness, as disinterest, as quiet fatigue. The body begins to slow down. The spirit stops answering your ambitions, and everything feels dull. You call it burnout, but it's really honesty. It's life saying, "I cannot pretend anymore." And yet, even here, the habit to strive continues. You start to think, "I must recover quickly," or "I'll rest just enough to go back to working hard again." But true rest isn't preparation for more effort. True rest is the recognition that effort was never needed. You have been breathing life as though it were a job. You've been trying to keep the rhythm going, believing that if you stop, something terrible will happen. But life has been breathing you all along. When you stop forcing, the breath continues. When you stop controlling, the heart still beats. This is the beginning of understanding that trying is not the same as living. There's a strange beauty in realizing that you don't have to keep the world spinning. It spins on its own. You don't have to hold everything together. The universe already knows how. Think about a flower. It does not strain to bloom. It doesn't calculate when to open. It feels the warmth of the sun, and something inside it simply unfolds. That's what you are not the one making things happen, but the one being unfolded by life itself. So when you find yourself exhausted but unable to stop trying, you can begin by simply watching the trying. Don't try to quit trying, just notice it. Watch how the mind says, "Keep moving, keep fixing, keep improving," and see it as a habit, not a truth. In that watching, something miraculous happens. Awareness itself begins to rest. You realize that effort is a kind of resistance, a way of saying, "Life, you are not yet good enough." But what if life never needed to be improved? What if the moment you stop resisting it, it already becomes perfect, not in the moral sense, but in the whole sense? Trying to perfect life is like polishing a wave. The more you touch it, the more it scatters. When you stop meddling, the surface of the water becomes clear again, and in that clarity, you finally see what was always there, yourself, not as a worker or a seeker or a struggler, but as awareness itself. Awareness is effortless. It doesn't need to maintain itself. It doesn't wake up in the morning and say, "I must continue being aware." It simply is. And that's the truth of who you are. You are not the effort, you are the space in which effort happens. The exhaustion you feel isn't a failure, it's a doorway. It's the body's way of guiding you home. It says, "Come back, stop running, nothing is chasing you." And when you listen to that invitation, something shifts quietly inside. The muscles unclench, the breath deepens, the mind stops asking what comes next. For a few brief moments, you're not a project, not a person trying to become. And when you listen to that invitation, something shifts quietly inside. The muscles unclench, the breath deepens. The mind stops asking what comes next. For a few brief moments, you're not a project, not a person trying to become. You're simply being. And that simple being, unadorned and unforced, is what you've been searching for all along. You don't have to earn rest. You are made of it. You don't have to deserve peace. You are already peace, temporarily disguised as a tired human being trying to remember where it went. When you understand that, the world doesn't need to change for you to rest. The circumstances don't have to improve. The people around you don't need to behave differently. You just have to stop holding your breath long enough to remember that life is not waiting for you to catch up. It has been carrying you the entire time. The beauty of surrender is that nothing actually stops. Everything continues, but without strain. You still work, you still love, you still face challenges, but they flow through you instead of against you. You begin to act from ease rather than toward it. And that, perhaps, is the quiet secret of all spiritual exhaustion. It isn't a curse. It's the universe's way of making you tired of pretending that you are in control. There's a moment that comes after long fatigue when even thought becomes soft. The voice that once urged you forward begins to lose its conviction. It still speaks, but its words don't land quite the same way. You should be doing more, it says. But it sounds almost tired of hearing itself. You start to notice the absurdity of how long you've been obeying it. You remember the countless times you pushed yourself because you believed something waited at the end of the road, the perfect day, the perfect peace, the perfect version of yourself. But the further you went, the more you realized there was no finish line, only a looping horizon. Every goal melted into the next one, and the moment you reached what you thought would be relief, your mind whispered, just one more step. You see, the game of self-improvement never ends because it feeds on its own dissatisfaction. It survives by convincing you that who you are right now is not enough. And as long as you believe that voice, you will never rest, not even for a breath. So the first act of wisdom is not to conquer that voice, but to recognize it for what it is, habit. It is not life itself. It is the echo of a world that believes worth is measured by motion. Every culture has its myth of progress. In the modern one, progress became a moral duty. We build faster machines, we write longer lists, we measure success by the number of things done rather than the depth with which anything was lived. Even spirituality was infected by this fever. Meditation became another race, another ladder to climb. But awareness does not improve through struggle. It simply notices. The moment you see the trap, you are already free from it. Try this sometime. Sit for a few minutes and allow yourself to do nothing. Don't even call it meditation. Just sit. You'll notice almost immediately how the mind resists. It says, I should be using this time. I should be productive. Watch that urge as if it belonged to a stranger. You'll see that effort is not your nature, it's conditioning. When you stop obeying it, something ancient begins to breathe again inside you, the quiet intelligence of rest. Look at animals. They don't rest because they've finished their to-do list. They rest because the sun is warm, because the moment invites them. They act when there is movement, and they lie still when there isn't. That rhythm, that effortless alignment with the pulse of existence, is what humans once knew before they became afraid of stillness. To be still in this world is to appear useless, and nothing terrifies the ego more than uselessness. It thrives on proving itself. Yet usefulness is temporary, while being is eternal. When you let go of the need to prove your worth, you begin to rediscover wonder. You see how much of life you've missed by trying to justify your place in it. The color of the sky, the sound of your own breathing, the subtle hum of aliveness that has always been present, these return when striving subsides. And in that rediscovery, gratitude awakens. Not the kind you list in a journal, but the kind that happens wordlessly, like a flower opening at dawn. You don't say, I am grateful. You simply feel the quiet joy of existence. That joy does not depend on success or progress. It arises from the simple permission to be. When you understand that, even tiredness feels different. You no longer resent it. You let the body rest, the mind drift, and you see that exhaustion was never your enemy. It was your teacher. It came to show you the limits of control. It came to whisper, now, stop, you've done enough. You see, effort is not wrong. It's just not meant to be permanent. It's a wave that must fall back into the ocean. The problem begins when we try to hold the wave in place, when we try to live in perpetual crest. Life breathes in and out. There are times for expansion and times for surrender. The wise person does not cling to one or the other. They move with the rhythm as a dancer moves with the music. When you finally allow yourself to stop, you may feel fear at first. The silence can seem heavy. The stillness may feel like a void. But if you stay long enough, you realize the void isn't empty, it's full. Full of everything you were too busy to notice. Full of the pulse of being, the quiet hum of awareness itself. And then the most natural thing happens, energy returns. But now it flows differently. It no longer burns from tension, it moves from ease. You begin to act without forcing. Things get done, not through pushing, but through participation. You are no longer the worker dragging the load, you are the current carrying the boat. This is what the Taoists meant by Wu Wei, action without effort, movement without strain. It isn't laziness, it's precision. It's the intelligence of water flowing exactly where it needs to go. So when you feel that you cannot stop trying, do not fight it. See it, smile at it. Let the exhaustion do its work on you. Let it soften your pride. Let it show you how unnecessary most of your inner battles were. Eventually you will find that you can rest even while moving, that effort itself can become ease. And when that happens, life stops feeling like something to manage. It becomes something to experience. You realize that rest was never the reward at the end of the path, it was the path itself. The truth is beautifully simple. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be carried. You are allowed to be ordinary, unaccomplished, unfinished, and still completely whole. When you finally believe that, exhaustion turns to peace. And peace is what you were trying to find by working so hard all along. There's a peculiar lightness that appears when the struggle finally dissolves. You wake up one morning and realize that the world hasn't changed, but your grip on it has loosened. The same work waits on the table. The same people expect your attention. The same sounds move through the day. Yet, something invisible is gone, that constant sense of being late to your own life. This is what true rest feels like. Not absence of motion, but absence of resistance. The river still flows, the seasons still turn, but now you are moving with them instead of against them. You begin to notice that life was never meant to be wrestled into submission. It was meant to be danced with. When you stop pulling, it stops pulling back. It's strange how this understanding arrives. It doesn't come from new knowledge, but from finally growing tired of your own tension. You no longer need to convince life to cooperate. You start to trust that it already knows where to go. And in that trust, something ancient begins to return, the natural rhythm that was always beneath the noise. You eat when hungry, sleep when tired, speak when words come, stay silent when they don't. It feels simple, almost childlike, as if the universe has taken over the task of living. The mind doesn't like this at first. It's too quiet. It doesn't have metrics for ease. It asks, am I doing it right? And life replies, there's nothing to do right. There's only what's happening. When you understand that, even your problems begin to breathe. They stop being heavy walls and start becoming passing weather. You don't deny them. You just stop identifying with them. You realize that you were never the storm. You were the sky. And the sky doesn't get tired of holding the clouds. It just lets them move. You start to see that exhaustion was never the problem, control was. You were never tired from doing too much. You were tired from trying to dictate how things should be. The effort to control is subtle. It hides inside even the most noble intentions. You try to control your emotions so that you can be spiritual, your image so that you can be loved, your destiny so that you can feel safe. But the more you try, the further you drift from the effortless intelligence that has been guiding life since the beginning. Look at the trees again. They don't manage their growth. They don't consult a plan before sprouting. Their perfection lies in their lack of strategy. They trust the soil, the rain, the sun. They let the universe grow them. And this, you see, is what the universe is doing with you. You are being grown. All the strain, all the seeking, all the fatigue, they were not mistakes, but growing pains. You were learning to let life do what it does best. You were learning to stop pretending that you are separate from its flow. Once this is seen, the world begins to look softer. You no longer judge people for being asleep or awake, strong or weak, disciplined or chaotic. You see that everyone is simply being lived by the same current, each at their own pace, each in their own shape. The need to compare dissolves, the envy fades, the guilt quiets, because now you understand that nobody is behind and nobody is ahead. There is no race. When that realization sinks in, gratitude rushes in like air into lungs that have been held too long. You start to love again, not in the sentimental way, but as a quiet recognition that everything belongs. You find beauty in the ordinary, the way sunlight touches the sink, the sound of a kettle boiling, the tired laugh of a stranger on the bus. These small things were always holy. You were just too busy chasing bigger ones to notice. This is what rest does. It restores vision. You begin to see that the sacred was never elsewhere. It was in the pauses between thoughts, in the stillness between breaths, in the overlooked simplicity of existing. And because you finally stop rushing, life starts to show you its secret patterns. You begin to see how even the difficult moments were part of your unfolding. The heartbreaks, the failures, the sleepless nights, none of them wasted. Each was carving space for something deeper to grow. There's a softness that comes with seeing this, a tenderness toward everything you once resisted. You stop dividing your experience into good and bad. It's all movement now, all expression. Rest becomes your natural state, not because you avoid work or silence your ambition, but because you finally see that even effort can be effortless when it flows from being. When you cook, you simply cook. When you speak, you simply speak. When you rest, you truly rest. Nothing stands in the way. It's not that life becomes easier, it becomes truer. The most surprising part of this transformation is that it doesn't make you passive, it makes you alive. You act more clearly because you are no longer acting from fear. You create, but not to prove anything. You help others, not because you should, but because the impulse to give rises naturally from peace. You realize that when you were striving, you were actually trying to find permission to live. And now that permission has been given not by the world, but by your own awareness. The irony is beautiful. You spent years trying to reach a place that was never absent. The one who was seeking rest was made of rest all along. That understanding doesn't require effort to maintain. Once seen, it sustains itself. And so, you walk differently now. You breathe differently. Even your tiredness feels sacred. You know that when fatigue comes again, it's not punishment. It's just another reminder to pause and return. The world continues to move fast, chaotic, demanding. But within you, there is a still point, a place untouched by hurry, a place that whispers, all is well, even when it isn't. That's the gift exhaustion came to give you. Not weakness, but wisdom. The wisdom of remembering that you don't have to be the one doing life. Life is doing you, and it's doing it beautifully.
You know, one of the most peculiar and yet most inevitable experiences on the path of awakening is the discovery that you are changing in ways that others around you are not. And this creates a very strange predicament. It's rather like what happens when a caterpillar begins to transform into a butterfly while still surrounded by caterpillars who are quite content to remain caterpillars. Now, I want to talk about this because it's something that almost everyone who begins to wake up will encounter. And it can be one of the most isolating, confusing, and yes, dangerous experiences you'll face. Not dangerous in the sense that you'll come to physical harm necessarily, though that has happened throughout history, but dangerous in the sense that you may lose everything that once gave you a sense of belonging, identity, and security. Let me begin by saying that growth is not comfortable. It never has been, and it never will be. When a lobster outgrows its shell, it must shed that shell and expose itself, soft and vulnerable, until a new shell forms. During that time, it is in grave danger. Every predator in the ocean would love to make a meal of a soft-shelled lobster. But if the lobster refuses to shed its shell, if it clings to the safety of what it knows, it cannot grow. It will remain stunted, confined, unable to realize its full potential. Human beings are much the same way. We outgrow our shells, our beliefs, our relationships, our ways of understanding the world, and when we do, we become vulnerable. We lose the protection of the crowd, the comfort of conformity, the security of being like everyone else. And this vulnerability, this exposure, is what I mean by danger. Now, what does it mean to outgrow those around you? It doesn't mean that you've become superior, or that you're better than they are. This is a trap that many people fall into, and it's a sign that they haven't really grown at all. They've simply traded one form of ego inflation for another. No, outgrowing others means that you've begun to see things that they don't see yet, that you've asked questions they haven't asked, that you've stepped out of the agreed-upon framework of reality while they remain comfortably within it. Perhaps you've begun to question the values that everyone takes for granted. The pursuit of wealth, status, security, the accumulation of possessions, the endless distractions and entertainments that fill up our lives. Perhaps you've begun to see that these things don't lead to happiness, that they're empty promises, that they're symptoms of a deeper malaise, a fundamental misunderstanding about what life is and what we are. Or perhaps you've had experiences through meditation, through contemplation, through crisis, through psychedelics, through some spontaneous opening that have shown you that reality is far more mysterious, far more fluid, far more consciousness-dependent than the solid, objective, external world that everyone believes in. You've seen through the illusion of the separate self, or at least caught a glimpse behind the curtain, and now you can't unsee it. When this happens, you find yourself in a very odd position. You're living in two worlds simultaneously. There's the conventional world, the world of commerce and politics and daily routine, the world where everyone is playing their roles and taking it all very seriously. And then there's this other dimension, this deeper reality, that's always present but that most people are completely oblivious to. And you must learn to navigate both worlds. You must learn to speak two languages, the language of the marketplace and the language of the mystic. You must learn to be in the world but not of it, as the old saying goes. And this is extraordinarily difficult because the two worlds have different rules, different values, different ways of making sense of experience. The people around you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, they're still operating entirely within the conventional framework. They're concerned with their careers, their mortgages, their social standing, their plans for the future. And these concerns, which once seemed so important to you, now seem rather trivial, rather beside the point. Not because you've become callous or indifferent, but because you've seen that there are deeper questions, more fundamental issues at stake. But you can't simply tell them this. You can't sit down with your family at dinner and say, I've realized that the self is an illusion and that we're all manifestations of one universal consciousness. They'll look at you as if you've lost your mind. And in a sense, you've lost the conventional mind, the socially conditioned mind, and you haven't yet fully articulated what you found in its place. So you remain silent, or you speak in hints and suggestions, or you try to find people who understand what you're going through. And this is where the isolation begins. Because the people you've known all your life, the people you love and care about, increasingly seem to be living in a different reality than you are. You're speaking different languages, pursuing different goals, seeing the world through entirely different lenses. And they sense this, even if they can't articulate it. They sense that you're no longer quite one of them. that you've changed in some fundamental way, that you're not playing the game with the same enthusiasm you once had. And this makes them uncomfortable. It threatens them. Because if you can step outside the agreed-upon framework, then maybe the framework isn't as solid as they thought. Maybe their own lives are built on sand. They may respond in various ways. Some will try to pull you back, to normalize you, to get you to be the way you used to be. You've changed, they'll say, and it won't be a compliment. They'll accuse you of becoming strange, impractical, irresponsible, self-absorbed. They'll remind you of your duties, your obligations, your place in the social order. They'll do everything they can to squeeze you back into the box you've outgrown. Others will simply distance themselves from you. They'll find you boring or preachy or incomprehensible. The conversations that once flowed easily now feel forced and superficial. You have less and less in common. The friendship or relationship gradually withers, not through any dramatic break, but through a slow, sad drifting apart. Still others may become hostile. This is particularly true if you've outgrown a religious or ideological framework that they're still invested in. If you were raised in a particular faith and you've moved beyond it, if you've questioned the dogmas and found them wanting, your very existence becomes a threat to those who still believe. You're a heretic, an apostate, a lost soul who must be saved or shunned. This is the danger I'm speaking of. Not that you'll be physically harmed necessarily, though that can happen, but that you'll lose your community, your tribe, your sense of belonging to something larger than yourself. Human beings are social creatures. We need connection. We need to feel that we're part of a group, that we're understood and accepted. And when you outgrow those around you, you risk losing all of that. Now, you might say, well, why not just keep quiet about it? Why not simply maintain the facade, play along, keep your insights to yourself? And many people do exactly this. They live double lives. They maintain the conventional appearance while privately knowing that it's all a game, all a performance. And there's a certain wisdom in this approach. As I said earlier, you don't shake someone awake from a pleasant dream unless the house is on fire. But there are problems with this strategy as well. First, it's exhausting. Living a double life, constantly monitoring what you say, editing your thoughts, pretending to care about things that no longer matter to you, this takes a tremendous toll. You become alienated from yourself, split, fragmented. The very integration and wholeness you've been seeking through your spiritual growth becomes impossible because you're constantly betraying your own truth. Second, it's inauthentic. And authenticity, being true to what you've discovered, is essential to the spiritual path. If you've seen something true, something real, and you hide it, deny it, refuse to live by it, then what was the point of seeing it in the first place? You become like someone who's discovered a treasure but is too afraid to spend it, so they bury it in the ground and continue to live in poverty. Third, and perhaps most importantly, your very presence. Even if you say nothing, communicate something. People pick up on energy, on vibration, on the unspoken. If you've genuinely transformed, if you've genuinely outgrown the conventional framework, it will show in 1,000 subtle ways in the quality of your attention, in your responses to crisis and difficulty, in what you laugh at, in what you take seriously, in the way you move through the world. So you're faced with a dilemma. You can't go back, you can't unsee what you've seen, unknow what you've known. But you can't fully go forward either. At least not without consequences, without losses, without a period of profound loneliness and disorientation. This is what the mystics have always called the dark night of the soul. It's the passage between the old life and the new, the death of the caterpillar before the emergence of the butterfly. And it's dark precisely because you've left behind the familiar landmarks, the comfortable certainties, but you haven't yet arrived at the new dispensation. You're in between, in limbo, in the wilderness. During this time, you may feel utterly alone. You may wonder if you've made a terrible mistake, if you've thrown away everything valuable for some nebulous spiritual fantasy. You may long for the days when life was simpler, when you fit in, when you didn't question everything, when you could just go along with the program like everyone else. But here's what you must understand. This loneliness, this sense of isolation, is not a sign that you've gone wrong. It's a sign that you're going right. It's an inevitable stage in the process of transformation. Every hero in every myth must leave the village, must venture into the unknown, must face dragons and demons alone before they can return with the treasure. The treasure, in this case, is your authentic self, your true nature, freed from the conditioning and programming of society. But you cannot claim this treasure while still clinging to the approval and acceptance of those who represent that very conditioning. You must be willing to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to be criticized, to be rejected. Now, I want to be very clear about something. This doesn't mean you should go out of your way to alienate people, or that you should be arrogant or superior, or that you should reject everyone who doesn't share your level of understanding. That would be spiritual egoism, and it's just another trap, another form of separation. What it means is that you accept the consequences of your growth with grace and compassion. You understand that people are where they are, and they're doing the best they can with the level of consciousness they have. You don't judge them or look down on them. You simply recognize that you're on different paths, at least for now. And you trust that if you're meant to have community, if you're meant to have companions on the journey, they will appear. Because here's the wonderful thing. When you outgrow one level, when you shed one shell, you don't remain alone forever. You find others who have also outgrown that level. You discover a new community, a new tribe, a new set of companions who speak your language, who understand your experience, who are wrestling with the same questions you are. This is why spiritual seekers throughout history have formed communities, monasteries, ashrams, mystery schools, philosophical circles. Not because they're elitist or exclusive, but because they needed to be with others who understood what they were experiencing, who could support them through the difficult transitions, who could remind them that they weren't crazy, that the path was real, that the struggle was worthwhile. But these communities are often hidden, or at least not obvious. They don't advertise, they don't proselytize. You find them when you're ready, when your seeking becomes sincere enough, when your loneliness becomes acute enough, and often you find them in unexpected places, a chance conversation with a stranger, a book that falls into your hands at exactly the right moment, a teacher who appears just when you need them. The key is not to cling desperately to the old relationships out of fear of being alone, but also not to cut ties prematurely out of spiritual pride. There's a middle way, as there always is. You maintain what connections you can maintain authentically. You honor your history, your roots, the people who loved you before you changed. But you don't betray yourself to preserve those connections. You don't make yourself small to make others comfortable. And sometimes, miraculously, the people around you grow too. Sometimes your own transformation becomes a catalyst for their awakening. They see something in you, a peace, a clarity, a freedom, and they want it for themselves. They start asking questions. They start opening up. And then the relationship transforms along with you, deepens, becomes more real, more honest, more alive. But you can't force this. You can't make people grow. All you can do is be yourself, be authentic, be the embodiment of what you've discovered, and trust that those who are ready will recognize it. The rest will fall away, and you must let them go with love and gratitude for what they've given you, for the role they played in your journey, even if that role has now ended. The danger of outgrowing everyone around you is real. You may lose friends, family members, communities that once defined you. You may go through periods of profound loneliness. You may question whether it was worth it. But I can tell you, from my own experience and from observing countless others on this path, that on the other side of this danger is a freedom, an authenticity, a depth of being that makes all the losses worthwhile. Because what you gain is yourself, your true self, not the self that was constructed to fit in, to please others, to meet expectations. And once you've found that, once you've tasted that freedom, you realize that you were never really losing anything real. You were only losing illusions, masks, false identities. The real connections, the real love, the real community, these remain, or they appear anew, deeper and truer than before. So if you find yourself outgrowing those around you, know that you're not alone, even in your aloneness. Know that this is part of the process, part of the path. Know that it's temporary, this loneliness, this sense of being between worlds. And know that the courage it takes to keep growing, to keep being true to what you've seen, even when it costs you everything familiar, this courage is the mark of a genuine spiritual warrior, a true seeker of truth. The caterpillar must die for the butterfly to be born. There's no way around it. But what emerges is so much more beautiful, so much more free, so much more alive than what was lost. Trust the process. Trust your growth, and trust that life, in its infinite intelligence, is guiding you exactly where you need to go, even when the path leads through darkness and uncertainty.
You see, one of the strangest things about life is how desperately we chase what would have come to us if only we'd stopped running. We grow up taught that effort is everything, that the right people, the right opportunities, the right luxuries will appear only if we fight, compete, and push through. And yet, if you watch life closely, you begin to see that much of what truly matters has always come unannounced, like the breeze through an open window, or a melody that drifts in from somewhere you didn't expect. The trouble is that most of us don't trust that breeze. We want guarantees, schedules, proof that what's meant for us will arrive on time. So we tighten our grip on life, chasing the future as if it were running away. But the future isn't running, it's unfolding quietly, in rhythm with how relaxed or resistant you are to the present. Think of it this way. When you drop a pebble into still water, the ripples move out effortlessly, perfectly circular, perfectly balanced. The water doesn't strain to create that beauty. It simply responds. And yet, if the surface of the water were disturbed, the ripples would break, collide, distort. This is what happens when we live with too much effort. Our anxious vibrations distort the natural ripples of what is already coming toward us. We often say we're manifesting, or attracting, or creating, but all of those words imply that something is missing, that you must somehow force the universe into cooperation. Yet life itself has never needed your persuasion. It only needs your participation. Have you ever noticed that the moments when life seems to open most beautifully are the moments when you weren't trying? The day you stopped worrying about being liked, someone saw you truly for the first time. The week you stopped obsessing over money, an opportunity arrived effortlessly. It's as if existence has a sense of timing that human plans can't imitate. You see, life doesn't reward control, it rewards harmony. And harmony can't be forced. It's the sound that happens when two notes stop competing and start resonating. So many of us want to know, when will it happen? When will the right people find me? When will the success arrive? But what if the answer is not soon, not later, but already? That what's meant for you is not approaching from the distance, but waiting in the silence you refuse to enter. There's an old saying, a flower does not chase the bees. It opens, and in its openness, the bees come. This is not philosophy, it's nature. Openness itself is the magnetism of life, but the modern mind has forgotten how to open. We are all caught in what the Chinese sages called the striving mind, a constant itch to improve, to secure, to define ourselves. We want to be the person who has it all figured out. We want to prove to the world that we're in control. But in that performance, we lose the actual rhythm of being alive. When you are relaxed, truly relaxed, something extraordinary happens. You begin to sense the movement beneath the movement, the silent current that's been guiding you all along. That current brings the right people, the right experiences, even the right luxuries, without your anxious command. Now, this does not mean you should sit still and do nothing. That would be misunderstanding the art. Water flows, but it doesn't struggle to flow. There's a great difference between action that arises from anxiety and action that arises from alignment. The first is noisy, exhausting, and insecure. The second feels natural, graceful, as if something larger is breathing through you. Many people mistake stillness for laziness. But true stillness is not stagnation. It's participation without interference. You are not frozen, you are fluid. You move when life moves, and rest when it rests. The reason so many are weary is that they have forgotten this natural rhythm. We are constantly comparing our pace to someone else's, constantly checking whether our chapter matches another's story. And yet, no flower rushes its bloom, and no sunrise waits for applause. Relax, the right things are already in motion. The relationships meant to align with you are already orbiting your energy. The opportunities that will elevate you are already being arranged. But they cannot reach you if your signal is noise. Anxiety broadcasts a frequency of distrust. It tells the universe, I do not believe you will take care of me. And so life, respecting your belief, steps aside. You are not being punished, you are being paused. Life delays what you cannot yet receive without tension. This is not unfair, it's compassionate. Because if the very thing you dream of arrived now, before you were calm enough to hold it, it would slip through your fingers. Patience, then, is not waiting. Patience is trust in disguise. To live in trust is to realize that life is far more intelligent than your plans. It knows who must meet you, when they must arrive, and why they sometimes leave. It knows when to delay your success so that your soul can learn to handle its weight. It knows when to give you silence instead of applause so that you can hear your own rhythm again. And so, if you can stop clinging to timing, you may find that the people, luxuries, and experiences you thought you had to chase begin to appear uninvited because they were never gone. They were simply waiting for you to become still enough to notice them. Imagine your life as a great orchestra. Every person, event, and desire is an instrument. You are not the conductor. You are the audience and the music all at once. When you try to control the symphony, it becomes noise. But when you listen, truly listen, the rhythm aligns, and you begin to hear how every note belongs, even the dissonant ones. There is something profoundly luxurious about trust. It frees you from the exhausting need to prove yourself. It allows you to enjoy your current moment, even the in-between, with the same reverence you would have for the peak. Because the truth is, there is no peak. There is only the unfolding. And when you finally see that, everything changes. You stop worrying about who notices you, because you realize that the ones meant to see you cannot miss you. You stop obsessing over what you lack, because you realize that nothing essential can be taken. You stop fearing the future, because you realize that it is not approaching, it is emerging from within you, one relaxed breath at a time. The right people, the right opportunities, the right luxuries, they are not prizes you earn. They are reflections of your state of being. When you rest in alignment, life reflects that rest back to you in form. When you are tense, it mirrors tension. So, if you want to know what's coming next, look not at your circumstances, but at your state of consciousness. The anxious man creates delay. The trusting man creates flow. The grateful man creates abundance. It has always been this way. You are not separate from the source that arranges life. You are the expression of it. The tide doesn't consult the moon before rising. It rises because it must. You don't need to chase what is already on its way. You only need to stop disturbing the surface so it can find its reflection in you. And so, for now, breathe. Stop rehearsing what might go wrong. Stop calculating how to prove your worth. Stop mistaking busyness for purpose. You have not been forgotten nor left behind. You are being aligned. The right people, the right luxuries, the right life, they're not coming to you because you chase them. They're coming because they've recognized that you've finally become still enough to receive them. That's the secret. You do not attract by reaching. You attract by resting so completely in your being that life cannot help but meet you there. And when it does, you will see what all the great teachers have always tried to tell you, that peace itself is the highest magnetism, and surrender is the most intelligent form of action. For in the end, nothing real can miss you, and nothing unreal can stay. You see, when one begins to understand this strange relationship between stillness and attraction, it becomes clear that life is not something you chase, but something you cooperate with. The mind believes that if it stops striving, everything will fall apart. But what really collapses when you stop struggling is only the illusion of control. Life itself continues perfectly well without your interference, just as your heart beats and your lungs breathe without your permission. This is the essence of what the Taoists called Wu Wei, effortless action, or the art of doing without forcing. It does not mean sitting idly while the world moves. It means being so attuned to the rhythm of existence that your movements, your words, your very choices arise as naturally as a tree growing toward the Sunday. Most of the tension in your life comes from this subtle disconnection, the belief that you must make life happen. So you run faster, plan harder, and strain to hold together what would hold itself, if only you stop tightening your grip. Look closely. When you clench your fist around water, it slips through your fingers. But when you open your hand, the water stays. Stillness is that open hand. It is not apathy. It is confidence in the intelligence of life. You've noticed, perhaps, that certain people seem to attract the right opportunities without apparent effort. It is not that they are luckier. It is that they have learned to move with the current instead of against it. They trust the timing of things. They listen inwardly before they act outwardly. And when you listen like that, something extraordinary happens. Your outer world begins to rearrange itself to match your inner peace. You no longer need to manipulate. You no longer need to beg or prove. What is meant for you begins to arrive unforced, and what is not meant quietly fades. Stillness is not the absence of motion, but the absence of resistance. It is the calm within the movement, the space between each note in the music of life. Without that space, the melody would be unbearable. The silence between the notes is what allows the sound to sing. You may find this in something as simple as breathing. Notice how your breath moves in and out without you commanding it. You may try to control it, but after a few moments, the body takes over again, finding its natural rhythm. Life is just like that breath. You may hold it for a while, but eventually it breathes itself. This is what happens when you learn to trust the flow of your existence. You begin to breathe with life, not against it. And as you do, you'll begin to see that the right people, those who nourish your spirit and not just your ego, will enter your orbit quietly, without drama. You won't have to chase them, persuade them, or earn their approval. They will recognize your stillness as something familiar, something they've been seeking without knowing it. The universe communicates in resonance, not in noise. When you are frantic, you attract the frantic. When you are calm, you attract the calm. When you are desperate, you draw desperation. But when you rest in your own being, what is true begins to move toward you as if by some invisible magnetism. And this is not magic. It is simply law, the same law that governs sound, light, and tide. Everything vibrates, and like frequencies, find one another. So, when you quiet the mind, when you stop defending and explaining, when you begin to live from the deeper stillness beneath your surface, you become a clear frequency. The universe recognizes that clarity, and in its recognition, alignment happens. You see, the anxious person builds walls thinking they are building safety. The still person opens windows, and safety finds them. Stillness allows life to recognize itself through you. It is the bridge between you and everything you believe you are missing. Now, this doesn't mean the journey will always be without challenge. The current still carries waves, but even a wave, when understood, is only the sea rising to greet the wind. In the same way, your challenges are the universe adjusting your rhythm, tuning you to greater harmony. So when life slows you down, when plans fall apart, when you feel forgotten or delayed, remember, the pause is not punishment, the pause is placement. Something is aligning itself behind the scenes, in the silence you cannot yet see. This is why wisdom often hides in what the impatient call emptiness, because in that emptiness, all new things are born. When you sit by the ocean and listen to the waves, you are hearing the sound of both fullness and withdrawal. Each wave rises, expresses itself, and then dissolves, making space for the next. If you could freeze the wave at its peak, the beauty would die instantly. The motion is the miracle. So it is with your life. You cannot freeze any moment and call it success. The true luxury is not to possess, but to participate. When the mind becomes still enough, even the simplest act, sipping water, feeling sunlight, hearing laughter, becomes a kind of wealth that no money can purchase. For what you're experiencing in those moments is the luxury of being conscious, alive, aware. You will come to see that luxury is not always the gold or the car or the attention. True luxury is peace, the ability to sit with yourself and not crave an escape. And the irony, of course, is that when you no longer crave, abundance begins to surround you. Because abundance has always been here. It was your grasping that created the illusion of lack. You can see this reflected even in love. When you chase affection, it runs. When you radiate peace, it arrives. You cannot beg for what you already are. You can only realize it, and in realizing, reveal it to the world. The right people, the right luxuries, the right life, these are not rewards for effort. They are reflections of alignment. Life mirrors your state of consciousness precisely. And so the question is never when will it happen, but am I relaxed enough to let it? It is no accident that rivers curve. The direct path is rarely the natural one. Flow bends, turns, adjusts. If you were to straighten a river, you would destroy its grace. And if you try to straighten your own journey, you will exhaust yourself. The river knows where it's going. It doesn't need to see the sea to trust its direction. So too, your path is already leading you home, though you may not see the horizon yet. In our culture, we have become obsessed with control, controlling outcomes, narratives, even our own image. But the deeper you move into this obsession, the more life slips from your grasp. You become a sculptor who never stops chiseling until nothing is left of the stone. At some point, you must put down the tools and see that the masterpiece was never meant to be perfect, only alive. When you learn to relax into your being, you begin to sense that everything you once called coincidence was actually choreography. The right person calling at the right moment, the delay that led to a better opportunity, the heartbreak that made space for wisdom, none of it was random. It was life speaking to itself in a language too vast for the mind to translate. And so, if you can slow down enough to listen, you will hear it, the gentle hum of inevitability, the sound of what's already yours making its way to you, quietly, confidently, without rush. Relaxation is not passivity. It's participation with intelligence. It's knowing when to act and when to allow, when to move and when to trust movement itself. Even the stars, billions of miles apart, move in harmony because they are not forcing, they are obeying a rhythm older than thought. So, if you find yourself tired, burnt out, weary from effort, stop fighting the tide. Rest. Not because you've given up, but because the current will carry you better than your arms ever could. Everything you desire is already seeking you. The question is not how do I get it, but am I clear enough for it to recognize me? Because the truth is this: your stillness is not empty. It is full of intelligence, full of guidance, full of magnetic power that operates far beyond your conscious control. You do not summon what you want. You synchronize with it. And in that synchronization, life ceases to be a struggle and becomes a dance. You find that the luxuries, the people, the experiences arrive not as achievements, but as natural companions to your state of peace. They were never meant to be goals. They are confirmations. When you are still enough, you begin to realize life has always been on your side. The delays were lessons. The detours were redirections. The silence was guidance. Nothing was wasted. Even now, as you listen, you are exactly where you should be. There is nowhere else to reach, nothing else to earn. The current knows where it's going, and you are part of that current. So breathe, trust, stay open. Because right now, unseen and unheard, what belongs to you is already moving in your direction. And when it arrives, you will realize it was never coming from the outside at all. It was always emerging from the stillness within you. That is the quiet secret of the universe, and it is yours.
Have you ever looked back at your childhood and wondered why you were so different from the other children around you? Perhaps you felt things more deeply. Perhaps you saw things others didn't see. Perhaps you carried questions that none of your playmates seemed to ask. And perhaps you thought something was wrong with you, that you were broken somehow, that you didn't fit the mold everyone else seemed to slip into so easily. But what if I told you that those very things you thought made you strange were actually signs? Signs that you were already waking up to something bigger, something the world around you hadn't quite noticed yet. Signs that your consciousness was already stretching beyond the usual boundaries, like a seed cracking open beneath the soil, long before anyone sees the green shoot above ground. Let me share with you 5 signs from childhood that might prove you are already on this path, already sensing the music that most people never hear. The first sign is that you felt everything too deeply. Were you the child who cried when you saw a dead bird on the sidewalk? The one who couldn't watch certain movies because the sadness stayed with you for days? The one who felt the mood of a room the moment you walked into it, like stepping into water and knowing instantly whether it's warm or cold? Other children seemed to bounce along. They laughed, they played, they moved on. But you absorbed everything. A harsh word from a teacher didn't just sting for a moment. It lived in you. You replayed it. You felt it in your chest like a weight. When your parents argued, even if they thought you were asleep, you felt the tension, like a vibration in the air. You couldn't explain it. You just knew. This wasn't weakness, though everyone might have told you to toughen up, to stop being so sensitive. This was actually your antenna, your instrument for picking up signals that others missed. The awakened soul doesn't have thick walls. It has thin membranes. And yes, this means you feel the pain more acutely, but it also means you feel the beauty more acutely. You feel the truth more acutely. Most people go through life with their receivers turned down low. They have to, otherwise the noise would overwhelm them. But you came in with the volume turned up. You couldn't help it. This is how you were tuned. And while it made childhood harder, it also meant you were learning to read life at a level most people never access. Think of it this way. A musician with perfect pitch hears every note, every slight variation. To someone without that gift, the song sounds fine either way. But the musician knows. They hear what's off. They hear what's beautiful. They can't not hear it. You were born with something like perfect pitch for emotion, for energy, for the undercurrents of human experience. So if you were that sensitive child, the one who felt too much, understand this. You weren't defective. You were awake. Or at least, you were waking up. The world tried to teach you to shut down, to build walls, to stop feeling so much. But part of you refused. And that refusal, that insistence on staying open,
even when it hurt. That was the sign. The second sign is that you asked questions nobody else was asking. Do you remember sitting in church or at the dinner table or in school and suddenly thinking, but why? Why are we doing it this way? Who decided this? What if we're wrong? Maybe you asked these questions out loud and got uncomfortable looks. Maybe adults told you to be quiet, to stop being difficult, to just accept things the way they are. Or maybe you learned quickly to keep the questions to yourself, to smile and nod while inside your mind was spinning with doubts and curiosities that nobody else seemed to share. Other children wanted to know how things worked. You wanted to know why things were the way they were. Other children accepted the rules of the game. You wanted to know who made the rules and whether the rules made any sense. This wasn't rebellion for the sake of rebellion. This was genuine wondering. You looked at the world and it didn't quite add up. People said one thing and did another. They followed traditions without understanding them. They accepted suffering as normal. They chased after things that seemed hollow, and you, even as a child, sensed something was off about all of it. The awakened soul is born with a kind of cosmic skepticism. Not cynicism, skepticism. A willingness to question, to peek behind the curtain, to not take the surface story as the whole truth. Most people never develop this. They accept the script they're handed and read their lines until the curtain falls. But you couldn't. Something in you kept whispering, there's more to this. Look closer. Don't believe everything you're told. Maybe you asked about death and what happens after. Maybe you asked about God and why people fight over God. Maybe you asked about fairness and why some people have so much while others have nothing. Maybe you asked about the point of it all, the meaning, the reason we're here. These are not childish questions. These are the oldest questions, the deepest questions, the questions that sages and mystics have wrestled with for thousands of years, and you were asking them at age 7 or 8 or 10. Why? Because your soul was already looking beyond the game. It was already sensing that the ordinary explanations weren't sufficient. The third sign is that you spent a lot of time alone, and you liked it. Were you the child who wandered off to sit under a tree while the other kids played tag? The one who could spend hours in your room with your books or your drawings, or just your thoughts? The one who didn't always need friends around, who sometimes preferred the quiet company of yourself. It's not that you were antisocial. You could play with others, you could laugh and run and be part of the group. But something in you also craved solitude. You needed it the way you needed sleep. Too much time with people drained you. Too much noise, too much talking, too much surface chatter, and you started to feel lost, scattered, like you were forgetting something important. Other children seemed to fear being alone. They needed the group. They needed the validation, the distraction, the constant stimulation. But you went inward. You found something there in the silence that the noise couldn't give you. Perhaps you called it imagination. Perhaps you called it daydreaming. Perhaps you didn't call it anything at all. You just knew that when you sat quietly, when you let the world fade a bit, something else emerged. A stillness. A presence. A sense that you were more than just your name and your body and your circumstances. The awakened soul requires solitude. Not all the time, but regularly. Like a well that needs time to refill. You were already practicing this as a child, though nobody taught you. You were already learning to listen to the voice that doesn't shout, the voice that only speaks when everything else gets quiet. People might have worried about you. They might have said you were too introverted, too withdrawn, too much in your own world. But you weren't lost in your own world, you were found there. You were discovering that the most interesting thing in your life wasn't out there in the playground, or the shopping mall, or the television. It was in here, in the vast interior space of your own awareness. This is what meditation masters spend years trying to teach. The art of being alone without being lonely. The art of sitting still without getting bored. The art of finding richness in silence. You stumbled into this as a child. And while it might have made you seem odd to others, it was actually a sign of great spiritual maturity. You were already learning to be with yourself, to listen to yourself, to trust the inner quiet more than the outer noise. The fourth sign is that you saw through pretense and couldn't play along. Did you ever watch adults lie and wonder why nobody else seemed to notice? Not big dramatic lies, small ones, the polite ones, the social ones. Your mother smiling at a neighbor she just complained about. Your father pretending to like his boss at a company party. Your teacher praising a student she clearly couldn't stand. Other children might not have noticed or cared, but you noticed. You saw the mask and you saw the face beneath it. And it bothered you. It felt wrong. It felt like everyone was playing a game and pretending the game was real life. Maybe you tried to point it out once or twice. But Mom, you said you didn't like her. But Dad, you said your boss was a fool. And you got the look. The look that said, hush. We don't talk about these things. This is how the world works. But something in you resisted. Something in you couldn't fake it, couldn't play along, couldn't put on the mask quite as easily as everyone else seemed to. At parties you stood there awkward, unable to make small talk that felt empty. At family gatherings you felt like you were watching a performance. Everyone had their lines, everyone knew their role, and you were supposed to play yours. But you couldn't quite do it. Or when you did, it felt exhausting. Like wearing clothes that don't fit. The awakened soul has a very low tolerance for pretense. It sees the theater and it can't unsee it. This doesn't make you better than others. It doesn't make you more moral. It just means you're operating at a different frequency. You're picking up on the reality beneath the surface, and once you see it, you can't go back to pretending you don't. This is the emperor's new clothes. Everyone agreeing to see something that isn't there, because agreement is easier than truth. But you were the child who couldn't agree. Not because you wanted to be difficult, but because your eyes worked differently. You saw what was actually there, and what was actually there was often quite different from what people said was there. As you grew older, you probably learned to navigate this better. You learned to play the game when necessary, to smile and nod, to keep your observations to yourself. But you never forgot. You never stopped seeing. And that seeing, that inability to be fully fooled by the surface story, that was a sign of your awakening. The fifth sign is that you felt homesick for a place you'd never been. This is perhaps the strangest sign, and yet many awakened souls will recognize it immediately. Did you ever feel as a child a kind of longing, not for something specific, not for a toy or a trip or a person, but for something you couldn't name? A feeling that you were far from home, even when you were sitting in your own house. A feeling that you belonged somewhere else, somewhere you couldn't quite remember or describe. Some children feel this as a sadness. Others feel it as a restlessness. A sense that this world, this life, this ordinary existence isn't quite right. Not wrong exactly, just not complete. Like you're waiting for something. Like you're supposed to be somewhere else, doing something else, being something else. You might have looked at the stars and felt it. You might have sat by water and felt it. You might have been in a crowd and suddenly felt it wash over you. This ache, this strange nostalgia for something you've never experienced, at least not in this life. The truth is, the awakened soul remembers. Not consciously, perhaps. Not in words or images. But somewhere deep down, it remembers that it is not merely this body, this name, this story. It remembers that it came from something bigger, something infinite, something that this ordinary life only hints at. And so there is always this faint homesickness, this longing to return to the source, to remember fully, to wake up completely. Other children don't feel this because they are not yet sensing the gap between what they are and what they appear to be. They take the world at face value. They accept that this is it, this is life, and they settle into it. But you couldn't settle. Not completely. Something in you remained unsettled, remained awake, remained aware that there is more. This is not depression, though it can be mistaken for it. This is spiritual memory, the soul remembering itself. And if you felt this as a child, that strange homesickness for nowhere in particular, that longing for something you couldn't name, then you are already waking up, already sensing that life is more than meets the eye, already knowing in some wordless way that you are not just a person living a life, you are consciousness itself, briefly wearing the costume of a person. So what does it all mean? Here we are, 5 signs, feeling too deeply, asking impossible questions, needing solitude, seeing through the masks, longing for home. If even 1 or 2 of these resonated with your childhood, chances are you were already an awakened soul, or at least a soul in the process of awakening. But what does this mean for you now? Well, it means several things. First, it means your childhood wasn't a mistake. All that strangeness, all that sensitivity, all that feeling different and out of place, it wasn't a flaw, it was a feature. You were picking up on things that most people never notice. You were seeing what most people never see. And yes, this made growing up harder, but it also made you real in a way that many people never become. Second, it means you have a responsibility, not a burden. A responsibility is huge, because the world needs people who can feel deeply, who can ask real questions, who can sit in silence, who can see through pretense, who can remember that we are more than these bodies and these stories. The world is drowning in noise and surface and distraction. And you, with your particular way of being, you are medicine. You are an antidote to the sleepwalking. Third, it means you don't have to pretend anymore. If you spent your childhood trying to be like everyone else, trying to fit in, trying to dull your sensitivity, or quiet your questions, or hide your need for solitude, you can stop now. You can accept that you were built differently. Not better, not worse, differently. And that difference is exactly what you're meant to bring to this world. The awakened soul isn't awakened because it's special. It's awakened because it couldn't help but wake up. It tried to sleep like everyone else. But something kept poking it, nudging it, whispering in its ear, and finally it opened its eyes and realized, oh, I've been awake this whole time. I just thought I was supposed to be asleep. If you were that child, the one who felt too much, asked too much, needed quiet too much, saw too much, longed too much, then you were already awake. Perhaps you didn't know what to call it. Perhaps you tried to ignore it, or suppress it, or make it go away. But it didn't go away, did it? Because it's not something you can get rid of. It's what you are. And now, looking back, you can see that those signs were not problems to be solved. They were invitations. Invitations to trust your own experience, to honor your own awareness, to stop pretending you're something you're not. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain, and so obvious, and so simple. Yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. But the awakened soul knows this already. Even as a child it knew. It didn't need to be taught. It just knew, somewhere deep down, that the point isn't to get somewhere else, or become someone else. The point is to be here, to be awake, to be present to this strange and beautiful and terrible and miraculous fact of existence. So if these signs are yours, if you recognize yourself in these patterns, then welcome. Welcome to a life of being more awake than the culture around you generally prefers. Welcome to a life of seeing what others miss and feeling what others avoid. Welcome to a life of asking questions that don't have easy answers and finding comfort in silence when everyone else is shouting. You are not broken. You never were. You were just awake in a world that's mostly asleep. And the world needs you to stay awake, not to judge those who are sleeping, not to feel superior or separate, but simply to be what you are, to be the one who feels, who questions, who sits quietly, who sees clearly, who remembers home. That's what an awakened soul does. It doesn't try to wake anyone up by force. It just lives awake. And in doing so, it gives permission to others to wake up too. Simply by being itself. Simply by refusing to pretend. Simply by staying open when everything else is closing down. You've been doing this since you were a child. You just didn't have the words for it. Now you do. Now you can look back and see that your strange childhood wasn't a mistake. It was the beginning of something. And that something is still unfolding, still growing.